This is Jocko Podcast number 468 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
Also joining us tonight, Sean Glass.
What's up, Jocko?
Yeah.
Echo.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there you go. Sean's a former SEAL officer, fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, got out of the Navy, went into a leadership position at a startup, eventually joined us at Echelon Front as a leadership instructor. That's where he works now. He's worked with scores of companies in every imaginable industry. He's also a husband, father, has a small farm. What do they call that? Like a hobby farm? Is yours bigger than a hobby farm?
You can call it. I mean, it's 60 acres. I don't know if you'd call that a hobby farm.
Okay, that's a little bigger.
I mean, it's not. It's in Virginia. So if I was to say 60 acres in Montana, it's a hobby farm.
Yeah.
60 acres in Virginia. It's small, but it's still decent.
Okay.
I think I graduated from hobby to small farm.
Okay, so he has a small farm in the Shenandoah Valley. He has a little company called Primal Beef, and he's been on the podcast before. He's been on episode 404. So if you want to hear his origin story, go back and listen to episode 404. But we're going to talk about some of his experiences and lessons learned that we didn't discuss the first time that he was on. And that's because we're always learning. We're always reflecting. And let's talk about what you've learned in the past couple of years. That's the thing is when you start to work at Echelon Front, people working there, we talk about leadership all the time. And we hear stories of leadership all the time, and we're watching leadership inside of companies all the time. And so we're constantly like what is it when a doctor thinks they have diseases, or they're constantly checking, and like a psychologist thinks they have these crazy diseases or thinks they have these mental problems. So when you're working at Echelon Front, you're constantly reviewing your whole life and every leadership call that you ever made. And it can be humbling to look at your mistakes. And you also go, I did that one pretty good, but I messed this one up. So you've been going through that process for a few years now. So awesome, man. Let's get into it. You got in your first platoon, got done with Budge, you get in your first platoon. Wasn't there something that went down at land warfare? Some Chemlite scenario that happened? What was that all about?
Yeah. So, new guy tour. He's an officer. It's a new guy tour. So you're trying to prove yourself at all times. Land warfare was our first real block of training, which, as you know, and Echo probably knows now as well, sitting in that seat for as long as he has, that's kind of like the proving ground for the SEAL teams is land warfare. That's where, bread and butter, all the hard work. That's where the platoon comes together, or doesn't come together sometimes, but that's where I think your character is tested more than any other place. Super hard training, long hours. I went through, it was always the summertime when I went through, so it's average day out at Nyland's like 115, something like that. So, first time to prove myself, I'm doing pretty solid. Training's progressing. We get to right about the portion where we're going to start doing the field training exercises.
And what are you, a squad leader at this point?
Squad commander.
And a squad commander.
Yeah, we changed
Only
the verbiage.
Only the SEAL teams could do that.
Change that
Only
verbiage.
the SEAL teams
which means
change.
like you're in charge of 8 people, but you're not really in charge of 8 people.
That's classic. Did you have 2 junior officers and one platoon commander?
So it was myself, Rob Birch, who's about to retire after doing 20, prior enlisted guy, total stud. I'm actually linking up with him tonight to hang out a bit.
Right on.
Total stud, one of those guys that's like just good at everything he does. And then platoon commander, platoon chief.
So, yeah, because back in the day, there was only 2 officers in the platoon commander, and then an assistant platoon commander. And then at this juncture, because the SEAL teams has always got some kind of new flavor going on. So at this point in the SEAL teams, it was, all right, you're going to have one officer, and then each squad is going to have its own leader.
Correct.
No, commander. Okay,
Commander.
So you're a squad commander.
Yeah.
Bro, this guy was in charge of 7 other dudes, and he's getting called commander. Oh, yeah. Okay, hey, we'll go with it, dude. All right, so you're a squad commander, and what's going down?
So you're getting towards the point of training we're going to do the FTXs, which is, put everything together. Mm-hmm. So it's simulated real-world operation. All of our training is iterative, so they're building blocks. We've been doing patrolling, we've been doing IADs, we've been doing reactive contact drills, and now you're starting to put things together. So before the first FTX, you do some raids practicals. And just think of a raid, for those listening, as it's the actions on. So it's not getting you to the target, you're at the target, you're setting up positions to take the target down, and then it's basically the actions that you would take to take the target down. So typically what happens is there's 2 good formations to take to conduct a raid. Either everybody's online or you set that L. The reason being is obviously you want to make sure that you know where all your people are, and you want to make sure that there's no potential fratricide out there. So online minimizes that, and then an L also minimizes that, but you've got to have some control measures in place with that L, because you've got what's called a base of fire and then a maneuver. So my element is the maneuver element. The sister platoon, so our other platoon that we were going through training with, 18 SEALs, they're the base element. The base element are the guys that are going to just be hammering the target with heavy machine gun fire, probably some Mark 40, so 40 Mike stuff like that. But they're just softening the target for a long period of time. And then after a certain period of time, then the maneuver element gets up and you start to push through. But right as you get up, the base element is still providing that cover fire. At some point in time, the base element has to do what we call shift fire, which means now they're still shooting, because when I'm shooting, bad guys keep their heads down, but they're not shooting potentially directly at the target. They're shifting their fire at a 45-degree angle to create some space for the base element to come in. And
for the assault element.
For the assault element to come in. And then at a certain point of time, the assault element has to signal to check fire. And check fire is when you're close enough to the target where it's now unsafe. The assault element takes over the assault. The base element has to stop shooting to keep everything safe. So perfect world, that's what happens. So I am a commander, so I'm given some extra responsibilities by my platoon chief, and I'm what's called the hinge man. So I am the guy in the assault element that has to signal to the base element when it's time to shift their fire and then when it's time to check the fire. So that's, a big responsibility for me. Again, always looking to prove myself, super fired up. So how we do this, at least at the time, was we had what's called a chem light bundle. So imagine a bunch of little chem lights, you tape them together, you throw them in the air. It's a visible cue for the base to say, okay, there's the chem light bundle. That's our cue to shift fire. The next chem light bundle, which is a different color. So the first one we threw out was green. That means shift fire. The next one that I throw out is red, and that's their sign for check fire. So the only way that they know how to shift fire and check fire is through that. Now you're thinking, well, comms. Sure, we have comms, but the guy right beside you is lighting up with a Mark 48 bell-fed machine gun. You can't really hear much of anything. So this is the two signals: green chem light bundle, red chem light bundle. So I've rehearsed it a bunch of times in my mind. I'm going to walk you through what it looked like, and then I'm going to walk you through what actually happened. So we start, base element just starts hammering it. To that point in time, it was the coolest thing I've ever seen as a new guy. You're just watching tracers just rip through everything. You've got 18 SEALs online. 18 SEALs, that's probably 4 Mark 48s and 3 46s. You're just getting after it. We start making our move. I want to prove myself. I want to show that I'm young and aggressive. I don't want to throw that chem light bundle out too soon. So we start walking, and we're starting to get close. And at about the 20-yard mark, where I'm just watching tracers zip by, chem light bundle comes out. Shift fire. We go about another 20 yards. I throw out the red chem light bundle, check fire. We do the raid. It goes great. After action reviewed right there on the scene, the trident instructors come up to us and they said, hey, that was legit. That was the best raid we've ever seen. That was the closest we've ever seen anyone allow their squad to get before they shifted fire. That's what we're talking about. That's the aggression we want to see. So I'm feeling pretty solid about myself. There's a guy in our platoon whose nickname is Grinch. He's the senior E6 that's not in a leadership position. He's kind of like the guy that all the E6s look up to, total stud. Very quiet, but he's called the Grinch for a reason. I don't think he's ever said a word to me up to this point, but he comes over to me and kind of gives me a tap in the chest, and he's like, F yeah, man, that's what I'm talking about. So again, I'm taking that on board, prove myself. At least that's what it looked like to everybody else. What really happened is I take the chem light bundle, and I'm thinking about the best place to store it. I've got 2 of them. The colors matter. You've got your nods on. You can't really see a whole lot of anything. So, color-wise, once you bring them up, everything just looks like a big glowing bundle. So I'm like, all right, green bundle, the first one I'm going to put right here, center mass, in my kit, kind of in one of my ammo pouches, so that way I know right where it is. I can grab it, chunk it. Second one, I attach to my hip with a little cord that I can just pop off and chunk it. So we're marching. I do want to prove myself, so I want to get close. So I don't even start messing with the chem light bundle until we're probably about 50 yards away. And then I go to grab the chem light bundle and I can't get it out. I don't know what it was caught on, but it was caught on something. And we're walking, I'm making sure that the whole platoon's online. We're walking, I'm trying to yank it out. I can't get it out. There's something that I could do to stop and just make sure that no one gets hurt, and that's to yell ceasefire. There's no way in hell as a new guy I'm yelling ceasefire on a range where my chief gave me the responsibility of being the hinge man in front of the sister platoon, in front of all the trainers. So I'm like, freaking out at this point because I'm thinking there's no other way. I'm going to have to yell ceasefire, and then I'm just going to get called out. My reputation is going to be ruined forever for screwing this up. I'm yanking. I can't get it out. I don't know what it's caught on. I can't see anything with my nods on. So I just, grab my knife out of my pocket and I'm just slashing everything that I can possibly slash on my kit to try to get it to break free. And it eventually breaks free. I'm like, the second it's free, I just chunk it up, shift fire. Then, the other one was easy to get off, check fire. So I don't think I've ever told anybody in my platoon that story before, but I went from, I didn't say anything to anybody, of course. I took the credit that everybody was giving me, but it was up to that point the scaredest I've ever been in the SEAL teams, because I'm like, I'm either going to have to call ceasefire, which how that makes me look, or I'm going to get my squad killed by walking into this line of fire. So I got some kudos for it. They probably weren't deserved, but at the time, a win was a win, so I took it.
And just so everyone knows, there's our range safety officers that would have blown the whistle.
He was right beside me.
Yeah, he's right beside you. He's probably watching your dumb ass. He's probably the only person that would. You probably owe that guy a beer. And there's a range safety officer with the base element. That's all. They're on nods. They can see where everyone's going. So there is some control. There's a lot of control in those live fire evolutions. But that is. It's interesting that you would rather die than look like a wimp out there, which is very common. Tony Afrati, BTF Tony, is horrified of heights. And I think he was in Hong Kong or something, and they were rappelling. They were doing like a 1,000-foot rappel, like off of a 50 or 80 or 100-story building.
Yeah.
And he said he was just like absolutely horrified, but he would just rather die. He was like, I truly believed I was going to die. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to die. Yeah. I'm just going to do this thing. And so you're in your first platoon, and it sounds like, and you were telling me earlier about like a little bit of arrogance, little cockiness that you had.
Yeah.
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah. I don't know. Like if you were an outside observer, you would probably have said definitely there's some ego there as far as just how I carried myself. I don't think I really treated anybody ever disrespectfully or anything like that. But I was pretty good as for a new guy. My chief gave me a lot of faith, allowed me to run a lot of things during training. My platoon commander did the same thing. So, I was a good shot. I was in good shape. I was making good calls. At least I think I had the respect of the guys in my platoon, and I let some of that get to me as far as my ego. Mm-hmm. And my platoon chief was always a guy that was going to be in my corner, was always going to encourage me, but also a guy that's going to let you know if you're stepping out of line.
This is Dave, right?
Yeah, this is Dave. Yeah. So, we get through workup. And I know he sees it. We've had some conversations where he's made me aware of it, but nothing that's going to
no hanging offenses,
right. Nothing like that. Just like, hey, things to be cognizant of. So we get through training, we deploy. 11 months in Afghanistan. Again, I got to run a whole lot of stuff. I'm working with different units. I'm running different operations. So the confidence and cocky level are probably starting to blur a little bit. So I find out on that tour that I'm going to get to go and do my platoon commander tour next, which is not normal at the time. Usually, as a new guy officer, you've got to go and do your new guy tour, and then you go do what's called the disassociated tour, where you're going to go some other command that's probably not necessarily in the SEALs. Maybe it's a boat team, maybe it's administrative or an operational position in a staff. But the theory is you get a breadth of experience, you see something else, you get a little bit more seniority, and then you come back and do your platoon commander tour. I was fortunate enough to go right from my squad commander to my platoon commander. So I'm sure this was Dave's way of telling me, you've got a couple things you need to work on as you're getting prepared to step into this platoon commander role. Because as a squad commander with a platoon commander and a platoon chief there to kind of keep me in check a little bit, but also, there was some mistakes that I made overseas, probably from overconfidence, cockiness, and they helped me out with it. So I think it was his way of saying,
give me an example of a mistake.
Working with different partner units, probably trying to take a little bit too much charge of stuff, and then they'd get some phone calls about stuff, and then instead of being like, hey man, what the heck, they just be like, hey, let's talk through this. Think about it from their perspective. They've been here for X amount of months, you roll up, and I'm not treating people person to person bad, but it was just kind of this thing of, hey, we're the SEAL team's here, you guys are supporting us, this is what we need, that type of thing.
You're a little bit of that guy.
A little bit of that guy. Yeah, from time to time, a little bit of that guy. So we're deployment's over with. We were very north in Afghanistan, like very northern Afghanistan. The biggest base, our home base, was Mazar-i-Sharif, which is in northern Afghanistan. It's a big air base, but we were 350 miles north of that. But that's where we have to go to redeploy. So we go down there.
You were doing VSO, right?
VSO, yeah, the Village Stability Operations piece, which was great time. And we come back there to redeploy. We end up having to stay there for 2 weeks because the bird got delayed, so we have time. And there's Mazar-i-Sharif is big airstrip, and then you've got the American side on one side of the airstrip, and then you had German side on the other side. American side, was a total dump. Nothing was improved. Nothing was, it was just gravel floors basically. The Germans, I don't know if they inherited this base or they just built it up, but it was a nice base. It had restaurants. It had all kinds of other stuff. So almost once a day, we'd all go across to the German side, get some food. We were on one of these trips. It was him, myself, and two of the older guys in the truck driving over there to get some food. Dave, my platoon chief, in the truck with me. He's driving. I'm sitting there. You're spent 11 months together deployed, and then 18 months training before that. You've talked about literally everything you could talk about at this point in time. So we were talking about superhero because I think like the first run of Marvel movies had just started to come out, and we had watched some at the base. So Dave's like, hey, if you could be any superhero, what would you be? And instantly I was like, Batman. Because Batman, it's awesome. I always want to be Batman. And he doesn't even look at me. He just says, you couldn't be Batman. I'm like, well, why not? And he goes, Batman wears a mask, and you would need people to know who was doing the heroic deeds. Ooh. Yeah. Ooh. Damn, yeah, that was a gut punch. I think it was a very well-deserved gut punch, but to me, that was his way of just politely giving me a little thump upside the head and setting me up for success, saying, you're about to be a platoon commander and you've got some things that you have to work on. Like, it was a privilege to be given the platoon commander spot, which he knows. So I think he was just telling me, check yourself before you go into that spot. But I tell you what, it probably made more of an impact on me than anything else that he could have said, just based on how he responded to that. Like, it got my attention. Mm-hmm. And I definitely, had a lot to think about, and I definitely made a change after that, for sure.
One thing I definitely realized, so you've heard the story of my second platoon where we fired our platoon commander. We had a mutiny, and the great guy, Delta Charlie, came in to take over. What I realized in that platoon was that, and I used to teach this to the young junior officers, you're gonna get the credit. You don't need to make everyone know that you could, because when you're the platoon commander, when the platoon does well, everyone's gonna look and go, hey, good job. Like, good job with your platoon. It's your platoon, good job. And when you do bad, everyone's gonna look at you and they're gonna say, hey, what's wrong with your platoon? So you can take all those insecurities you have that no one's gonna notice how awesome you are, and you can just settle them down because you're de facto the person in charge. You don't need to prove anything. That's the context I used to teach junior officers. Like, you don't need to prove that you're in charge of anything. You are de facto in charge. You're literally the platoon commander. And so what happens with a platoon, if it does well, you don't need to tell anyone how awesome you did. If your platoon does well, people know. And it's the same thing with a platoon chief. Like, a good platoon chief, everyone knows, oh yeah, they give that platoon chief gets a ton of credit because it's his platoon. So yeah, the officers tend to do that more because the chiefs kind of know that, It's the platoon chief, but the officers, they haven't been around long enough to be like, oh, I'm just going to get credit. And I don't need to tell anyone that I need credit.
Yeah. The thing that even makes it worse is my platoon commander was that guy. They never saw credit for anything. I would watch him actually take ownership for things that was not really on him during training, and he would just sit there and just take it. So I had a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great example. And I'm making it seem like I was the worst. Like I was not, but I definitely, it was there.
I remember you.
It was
you were not
there.
the worst. You were not at all. Like you were self-aware enough to at least be recognizing this stuff. A lot of people that they don't even recognize what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's, like a crazy person doesn't know that they're crazy.
Yeah.
A truly egotistical person, they have no comprehension that that's what's going on. And they rationalize it to themselves. Well, I mean, of course I'm going to be a little bit arrogant. Look at my performance. They say that. And that's their justification of rationalization.
It's not ego if it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. And then didn't you have some Dave again? I think I'm having Dave on the podcast at some point in the near future. Something happened with the SF guys, like some liaison that you had.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Yeah. So the Village Stability Operations mission set had been going on since 2009 in Afghanistan. We deployed very, very early 2011, like February of 2011. So Village Stability Operations was still relatively new for the campaign, but it was a very, very new mission set for the SEAL teams, because that is not something that the SEAL teams really train heavily to do, is that unconventional warfare thing. So it was a new mission set, but Green Berets, in conjunction with their assaults training and things like that, that's their mission set. So when we embedded, we had no real frame of reference for this outside of just lessons learned. So they gave us a liaison who had been doing this for a long time, a squared away Army, I think he was at E7, won't say his name, but we'll call him Pete. So Pete is kind of our liaison for these village stability operations. He's been cultivating some of these relationships with the local elders that we're going to need to know. So he's been basically laying the groundwork for us.
And are you guys going to do a turnover with him? Or is he going to stay on board?
Okay, he was supposed to stay on board. So we meet him at Mazar-e Sharif. We all convoy up to this place. We embed, and then he's basically all has these relationships built out, and we kind of fall in onto these relationships.
Damn, that's pretty nice that they gave you a guy like that.
It's huge.
That had been up there.
Yeah, it was huge. I'm sure that...
And how long had he been on deployment for?
Oh, my goodness. He was one of those guys that I don't know that he ever really went home. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things with the SF guys specifically, they would go back-to-back tours all the time. And Pete really, really loved it, so I think he was volunteering always to come back. So if I remember correctly, of like the last 3 or 4 years, he had probably spent 3 of them inside Afghanistan.
Jack.
So he'd been there forever. It was him and his terp that had built out. His interpreter was U.S. citizen, but Afghani born. So they had built out all these relationships for us. We embed with him. We're kind of, working with these relationships, building them up for us now. And he's going out with us on all these operations. And he's just, he's a savage. Like, this guy is a total stud. Definitely a little bit of a wild streak in him too. Like, he would disappear with his terp every now and then, and they would go into the village, and then they would go a little bit past the village, and they would go and do some relationship building or something, and then he would come back, and our platoon chief Dave would have to kind of be like, hey man, what are you said you were going over here, but then you went over there type thing. So he was a super courageous guy, put it that way. Like, not necessarily worried about his own self-preservation in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan. I'll give you an example of that. The first response to a firefight. So these different villages, they know we're there. The Taliban know we're there. So we're going and visiting these villages. We start building some relationships, talk to the village elders, hold these key leader engagements, and then we come back to our base. Well, the Taliban comes then into that village in the next day or two. Sometimes they would just talk with the village elders, and sometimes they would start slapping people around, shooting a couple people, try to prove that they're still in charge type thing. So it was one of those instances where they started to make a ruckus in a neighboring village. We get the call that they're in there, so we respond, and we go push out to basically clear them out of this village and protect the local population. So at the time, we had these big up-armored vehicles. I don't even think that we had our side-by-sides there yet up and running. So we have these big they're called MAT Vs. Imagine even larger than a Humvee. They're big off-road vehicles, and they're basically like wheeled tanks. Super capable. That's what we go out on. Pete has got a Iranian-made motorcycle called the Pamir, and he's riding on this Iranian-made motorcycle next to us, actually in front of us, as like the vanguard guiding us to this village that we need to go to. So en route to this village, we're probably about 100 meters away from this village. My vehicle was the lead vehicle at the time, besides Pete leading the charge on his Pamir motorcycle, and our vehicle just starts getting pinged with all these different incoming rounds. And I see Pete just kind of, no joke, dump the bike, jump up, dive behind a berm, and just start getting after it. Talking to him afterwards, he's like, rounds were just snapping all by him on his little motorcycle, and he just dove off into a ditch and started getting after it. He was good dude. Like, he was an awesome SF guy. As we were there for a little bit longer, we started to realize that he also had some issues that probably came from being in theater for too long. He was going... in that mission set, you got to go a little bit a little bit indigenous, because you're living with him. I think Pete went full indige. And we started to get the feeling that some of the times that he would go into these different villages, he would take his terp and he would come back and he would be pretty heavily inebriated. So again, Dave's such a good guy. He really likes Pete, and Pete is a stud. So he's trying to look out for him, and he's talking to him, and he's saying, you can't be doing all that nonsense. And Pete just doesn't take it on board. And it kind of came to a head one night where we have our base is in the village, and then there's two pieces of terrain to the right and the left, and we had our observation post with the heavy machine guns, the grenade launchers, all that stuff up there. So one of our new guys, Chris, a new guy with me, radios in and says, hey, there's machine gun fire going on in the wadi. It's the middle of the night. It's like 12 o'clock at night. So good on Chris, because he could have just lit that position up with the 50 cal, but he had enough SA to go, that's a little bit out of the ordinary. It's not being directed at us. So he calls back down to Chief. Chief rallies everybody. We clear through the wadi, and we find out it's Pete and his terp, and they're just hammered. And they're just clacking off rounds in the middle of nowhere. And luckily, as we were clearing up there, we realized what was going on, and no one took any shots when they were shooting everything. So get them, bring them back to our base. They're definitely hammered. And they're sitting on a bench. And Dave's talking to him. And Dave is now, Dave, he's calm until he needs to not be calm. And he's starting to get worked up now, because they've had this conversation multiple times. And he's telling them, you can't be doing that. You put everybody at risk. You put yourself at risk. You're damaging the relationship that we have here, that we're trying to build out with these village elders by, cracking off your machine guns in the middle of the wadi in the middle of the night. And Pete doesn't like the conversation too much. And he gets up and he goes and attempts to take a swing at Dave. And Dave just drops him with a straight right.
How tall is Dave?
6'6".
Yeah. And he was like a boxer growing up.
Yeah.
And he's a jiu-jitsu player. So he knows how to scrap.
Yeah. Dave hits hard.
Yeah.
Dave hits very hard.
Yeah.
And he
so the dude takes one, and the dude's drunk. And he takes a swing at
Dave. Yeah. Dave just rocks back, and then as he's coming back, boom, straight right, he's out cold. like timber, out cold. His terp, who's also inebriated, stands up, and I just kind of shoved him back down on the bench, and he was so gone, he wasn't going to do anything else. But
dude, I wish it was the two piece right there. I wish he cracked that terp too. Drop his ass.
The terp, I think, saw what happened and felt like he probably needed to do something, and then realized it wasn't prudent to do that. So Pete's just laid out now. And we're all just kind of sitting here like, Dave just dropped Pete. Justifiably just dropped Pete, probably for his own good.
And Pete and Dave are both E7s at this
Both
juncture.
E7s,
cool.
yeah. And hey, during the daytime,
they're all good.
They're all good, all good. But you get alcohol involved or Afghani wine or whatever it was, and things escalated. But that night, Dave, after he knocks him out, grabs him, drags him, and puts him in a Connex box and locks the Connex box. And he didn't do it because he was concerned about Pete. He did it because all of his E6s just watched Pete try to take a swing at Chief. Yeah. And he was very concerned about when he went to bed what would happen to Pete. So he puts Pete in the Connex box, and he puts one of the new guys or two of the new guys on watch. Pete wakes up the next morning. You know, he's definitely got a hangover and a sore jaw, but it's all good. But, you know, the real lesson here is, for me at least, was Dave could have ruined Pete's career. He could have called back and just said, hey, this guy's a liability. He's insane. He's doing all these things that he shouldn't be doing. You know, you need to fire this dude. You need to take care of him. But that's not what he did. He called up the sergeant major that we were all working for, SF sergeant major, that we were in their battle space. The sergeant major was awesome. He's an ex-CAD guy. He was about Dave's height, 6'8", but big country boy. Last name was Smith. And he calls him up and he just tells him, he's like, hey, Pete needs to go home and he needs some time at home to you know, take a breather. And I think Smith was also savvy enough to not ask too many questions. And Dave just goes, he's a good dude. He just needs to go home and take a knee for a little bit. Smith didn't ask any questions besides that. He took Pete back, spent some time with him there at the command, and then brought him back home, sent him back home on a bird, and I think got Pete some much needed R&R and clear his headspace. But because of the way that Dave dealt with that problem with the sergeant major, because he didn't try to make a big deal out of it, because he looked out for his guy, because he realized Pete was a legitimately good dude who had just probably been over there for a lot longer than he should have been over there. That sergeant major loved our platoon. There was not one thing that we asked for that tour that we did not get. And I think the vast majority of the reason was because of how Dave handled that situation and how he didn't try to throw Pete under the bus, about how he just tried to take care of a fellow soldier who needed, you know, maybe a little bit of outside encouragement to go take care of himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a legit example of the escalation of counseling as well. Like he's telling, hey, you can't be doing this, you can't be doing this, you can't. Oh, you're swinging, but you're getting dropped. No, that's great stuff. And there's always, you know, we could probably spend hours of you explaining, because when you're working with someone and you're seeing that they're doing a bunch of positive things and you're seeing that they're a good soldier but they have this issue that they got to deal with. And do we want to burn someone and ruin their career, even though they're a good person? They have an issue, right? So that's one of those decisions you can make. Now, there's other times where clearly people do things where you're like, oh yeah, you're done.
Yep.
And you're going home, or whatever the case may be. And you're going home, and I'm reporting everything that you just did, and I'm going to do everything I can to burn your career. That happens too. Mm-hmm. But realizing that there's a whole gray area, and you as a leader have to figure out, well, in this case, Dave as a leader, figure out how he's going to handle this. And clearly, you know, he probably could have called the sergeant major and said, hey, you know, what's this guy been like? What's Pete like? And the sergeant major could be, oh, he was a problem. That's why we sent him up there with you guys. Oh, okay. Because guess what? He's a real problem. The sergeant major was probably like, hey, you know, he had some issues at home. He wanted to stay on deployment, but yeah, he's dealing with some stuff. And like, oh, okay, cool. Guess what? You know, he needs some help. He needs a little breather. So good relationship up and down the chain of command. Awesome. So you end up rolling from that platoon right into your next platoon. Yeah. And now you're a platoon commander, which I'll
more credit.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, in the SEAL teams, you know, we call it a platoon commander. When it's a real stretch of the word commander, because when you got in this troop, now you get into you have a little bit of a frictional relationship. But when you roll in, you were telling me about this. This is when guys started getting their tridents straight out of SQT. Did you get your trident straight out of SQT?
I did.
Okay. And how did you get handled when you got to the team?
Because Dave was there, I got handled like a SEAL. Mm-hmm. There was no games. There was no removing the trident until you earned it for the platoon type thing, which is something that you know, I'm sure still happens every now and then.
Okay, so Echo Charles. Yeah. Back in the day, we used to graduate buds, and you didn't get your trident. Your trident is the thing that like you wear on your chest, means you're SEAL. And so when I graduate buds, you didn't get a trident. You just showed up to the SEAL team, and you showed up to the SEAL team, and you went through STT, SEAL Tactical Training, which was run by the SEAL team. And the SEAL team put you through that training. It was a couple months long. And when you got done with that, you had, actually, I don't know how long it was, probably 3 months or something like that. It definitely wasn't 6 months. So when you got done with that, you had to study, and you had an oral board where you had, like, they'd put like every weapon in the armory, every type of weapon in the armory into a poncho and shake it up, and they'd throw it out on the floor, and you have to put all the weapons together. They'd give you all these like dive physics problems, and you have to assemble a dive rig, and work on the radios and call 911. They just gave you a bunch of stuff. You had to do it. And when you were done, you were either approved or you were not approved, but pretty much everyone would, most people, unless they were idiots, would get their trident. So later, they made that training go to one centralized location, and at Naval Special Warfare Center. So now it was BUDS. You went to BUDS, and you went straight into SQT. Now it was called SEAL Qualification Training. That was now was your SQT 6 months long?
7 months, yeah. Because they added the jump at the end. So 6 months, then jump, so 7 months.
So you're like qualified. But they also ended up giving you your trident at the end of that. Well, you weren't at a SEAL team yet. They'd give you your trident. Now you'd show up at a SEAL team. You already had your trident. So some of the boys,
sure.
Some of the mafia, they didn't like that. They said, "Wait, you don't just give a guy a trident. He's not even in a platoon. How can you get a trident? You're not in a platoon." So they did all kinds of little things. One of them was, so in the military, if you have an inert training device, like an inert weapon, it'll be blue, or an inert like RPG will be blue, or an inert grenade is blue. So they would take their tridents and paint them blue, meaning like inert. They also had put them in, I've heard of them being put in a bird cage, because you call your trident your bird. They would take the tridents and put them in the bird cage, and until the platoon deemed that you deserve to have a trident, your bird is in the bird cage. I've heard them being in freaking fish tanks. Like, they've done all kinds of stuff. And different, and some people were like Dave, like, hey, that's, you're fine. Yeah. Actually, I didn't really think about this. In tasking a bruiser, we didn't do anything like that. It was just like the guy showed up, and we didn't think about their tridents too much. We treated them like new guys. Yeah.
Like, and you talk to guys, some of my buddies had that done to them, and they didn't look at it like it was, they have fond memories of it now. It's like, hey, it was our platoon's way of saying, welcome to the platoon type thing. So some of them have fond memories of that stuff, the bird cage.
So what was the deal with you guys? You guys had the blue tridents?
Blue tridents and on pink patches. So we show up to our first pre-training event. So the real 6 months of training, unit level training, you go through about a month of what we call pre-unit level training, which is basically you're doing shakeout patrols, you're getting some time on the range, getting your weapons all doped in, maybe doing 2-man entries and 4-man entries, 1-room entries, just basically doing what you need to do so that when you show up to day one of the actual training, you're ready to train and you don't have to spend hours doping in weapons and all that other stuff. So we're at our pre-ULT assaults training where we do our assaults. And first day, everyone puts their gear away. They're getting stuff ready for the kill house and for the range. And I'm sitting in that space, and one of my new guys comes walking by, and he's got a pink patch on his arm, like a fluorescent pink patch, huge, with a blue inert trident in it. And I called him over, and I said, "Hey, what's up with that patch?" And he goes, "Oh, all the new guys are wearing them."
You said pride.
Yeah. So, real sheepishly, he's like, "Hey, all the new guys are wearing them." And I'm thinking, in my platoon? I'm like, "Well, all the new guys?" And he's like, "Yeah, in the whole troop, 3 platoons." I said, "Well, who told you to wear that?" And he goes, "Well, the LPOs gave them out and told us all to wear them." And I'm very calm having this conversation with him, but I'm just boiling on the inside for several different reasons. So I call my LPO over, who's absolute stud, like awesome guy. And I just asked him, "Hey, what's the deal with these?" And he goes, "Hey, the other LPOs wanted to do it, and I didn't want to be the guy that says no. I don't see what the big deal is about it. So they're all wearing them."
Why was your blood boiling?
Primarily for me, there's a lot of SEALs with really good reputations that gave their stamp of approval to those guys to have their trident. So I was upset, one, because I think also as a grown man and a SEAL, you should not be wearing a pink patch with the blue trident on it. That was the primary reason. The secondary reason was because of kind of the message it sends. I'm like, well, you know, there's a lot of guys, and Dave was my first platoon chief, who I looked up very highly to. He was one of my BUDS instructors. So I know he was probably had a couple of these guys that were probably he put through as well. So I'm thinking, so Dave says they're good. All these other master chiefs at SQT say they're good. And now we're saying they're not good. So I was pretty heated, but nothing gets won by being super heated, by not being detached. So I stayed super detached. I'm like, hey, I'm just going to get the rest of the platoon leadership, the troop leadership in, and let's talk about these patches. With the end state being, I knew my guys weren't going to wear them. I actually told my new guy before he walked away, I said, take that off and go tell every other new guy to take those off. And then I pulled my LPO aside, talked with him. He gave me the backstory. I went and got my chief. We kind of got on the same page. And then I went and talked to the rest of the platoon commanders, platoon chief, and the troop chief, troop commander. And just said, hey, at first I was trying not to just plant the flag and say, absolutely not. My platoon's not going to do this. I was trying to build a little consensus and maybe show, at least in my perspective, why they shouldn't be rocking those patches. So try to win them over with some discussion, some of the same points we just talked about. Hey, they're grown men. They've earned their trident. You know, they shouldn't be walking around with these pink patches on. It's unprofessional. Use the whole thing about, well, you're telling me that we know more. We get more of a say than every E6, every E7, every E8, and every E9 who trained them, selected them, and said they were good to have these patches. So you're saying that their opinions don't really matter. And this is a brief summary of things, but this was like a 2 to 3 hour heated conversation.
Dang. Only in the SEAL teams can we get this kind of drama going, but we can get it. I shouldn't say only in the SEAL teams. Like any other organization, we can get our drama on.
Yeah. It was basically one of the platoon chiefs who, one of the other platoons was really planting the flag on it. Like, hey, this is not the officer's territory. This is the enlisted person's territory. And again, I'm not trying to stir things up too much. We're just forming up as a troop. But I told him, I said, hey, well, when it starts to affect the platoon, my platoon, I'm like, it becomes my territory. And that's when I kind of turned my tactic towards, I don't think I'm going to win them over. I think it's just time to plant the flag. One of the platoon commanders did say, hey, I see your point, and I don't think it's the right thing to do. Troop commander, I think, was trying to be diplomatic about things, and he goes, it's one or nothing. So either you guys all get on the same page, or you don't do it or you do it, but we're all going to do it or not do it together. And I finally just said, well, we're not doing it, so you guys can do whatever you want. But not the way that I wanted to start off the trip, but I felt like it was one of those things where, for my guys, like, I'm not going to let my guys walk around.
So what did you guys not do it? Did the rest of the troop do it?
Nope, they didn't do it, because it was the troop commander and troop chief said, hey, it's either one or none. And as a token, if you will, Steve Ward was the CMC at Team 7 at that time. So I said, to close the discussion out, I said, our platoon is not wearing them. And I looked at our troop chief and I said, if you want to go and ask Steve Ward if he's okay with these, and he says yes, we'll put him back on. I already knew what Steve was going to say. We get through that training trip. Senior chief, who I loved, he was an awesome troop chief, pulls me aside and he's like, I went and asked Steve, which my mind was kind of blown that he actually asked Steve in the first place, but he asked Steve, and Steve was like mortified, like, hell no, you're not going to do that. So it was one of those things that maybe doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but for me it was a huge deal, and I was not going to let my guys go around wearing a freaking pink patch with an inert trident on it. Well,
the patch thing was enough of a thing for Leif and I to write a freaking chapter about it in a book, because I had ours was a little bit of a different thing, but guys were just getting crazy with the patches. Highly offensive, which is funny when you're out in the desert by yourselves on a SEAL base around a bunch of frogmen. That's cool. I get it. They're funny. We all having a good time. But if Marine Corps battalion commander or an Army battalion commander sees like some patch which is vulgar at best, like totally offensive at worst, it's like, that shit's just not gonna fly, man. It's not happening. But the patch things, it's really interesting because I understood and still understand that there is absolutely a value in having material things that represent, like we're sitting here talking about the trident. The trident's a real thing. Mm-hmm. Like somebody made that up. It didn't even exist when the SEAL started. There wasn't a thing. They made a thing. They made a thing to signify like, oh, you're a SEAL. What are the awards that you get? Those are things that you're going to put on your uniform that said you were deployed at this time or you served honorably in this combat situation. These are all things that the military made up and blessed. By the way, we have a flag in America. Why do we have a flag? It's just, and we put an American flag patch on our gear, and those things work. And even in About Face, Hackworth, he would give. They had a patch. They had a patch, little hardcore Recondo patch is what it is. We ended up putting on a damn shirt. What up? So those things are real, and there's a reason. And the SEAL teams went through a whole thing of like the platoon patch you shouldn't be loyal to the platoon. You should be loyal to the teams, loyal to the Navy, loyal to the country, right? And so there's some fear that there was like an undermining, like this guy's more loyal to the platoon than he is to the team, to the Navy, to the country. And that's a thing that you can get scared of, right? And there is a reality to that because when you're in a platoon, you just said it, like you spent 18 months training with someone, then go on deployment for 11 months. And by the way, you risked lives together and you took lives together. Like there's things going on. So the patch thing is a real thing. And you just have to, you can't throw away the baby with the bathwater. Mm-hmm. And yet at the same time, like, what are we going to do now? A squad patch? Now we're going to do a fire team patch? We're going to do like a swim buddy patch? And where does it end? Where does it stop? So again, there's a bunch of different ways to handle it. And there's certain platoons that have a patch that means a lot to them and it's awesome. There's certain platoons that have a patch and it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean really much to them if they don't care about it. It's just one of those things as a leader you just got to pay attention to. Yeah. You just got to pay attention to. I mean, in the Army, the way the Army works their patches, they have official patches for their units. That's the way it is. And they wear those patches with pride, especially once they get that combat patch on their right arm. Like that's a thing they're going to wear for the rest of their lives with pride. And so here it is, a little thing that we kind of joke about, that I kind of joke about. It's like, oh, patches. You hear me kind of making fun of them. That's a real, it can be a very important thing. And so we as leaders need to remember that. And then, again, this goes over to what you're doing in the civilian sector. I've worked with plenty of construction companies that have some sticker that you get to put on your helmet after such and such a thing or such and such a project. You do these things and you get recognized for it. Even the uniforms in the Navy, you get the stripes on your arm. And if you've been well behaved, you get gold stripes. And if you're Tony Ephrati, you get red stripes because you've been busted down a few times. And you look at that group of guys, you see your brother over there with red stripes, like, okay, he was getting after it, maybe a little bit too much. So just important things to think about. You can make those patches beneficial. You can make them additive to the team. You can make them unify the team. They can put culture. They can implement culture into the team. And they can also do the opposite of each one of those things, depending on how you handle them as a leader. So important things to think about. How about your relationship with your troop commander? That now you're a platoon commander. Yep. And so you have a sister platoon. So there's another platoon commander, and then above you in the chain of command. You have three. We were the super troop at the time. Okay, so you had three platoon commanders, and you have a troop commander who's in charge of all three platoons. And it sounds like you started with a little bit of friction. Yeah. Was it over the patch thing, or was it something else? No, was just it GP? Just general. Yeah, just probably some personality conflicts there, not seeing eye to eye. Some of it was how he carried himself, some of the things he cared about that I didn't care about too much. And if you asked him, I don't know that he would have ever have said we have a bad relationship.
because I was smart enough to not have a bad relationship with him, but he definitely rubbed me the wrong way. And my first inclination with that was I just didn't want to spend any time with him. I wanted to minimize contact as much as I could. And luckily, I figured out real quick that was a silly tactic to take. We literally worked in the same office, like the same office space about this size. Yeah. We were going to be together for 2 years. So, and he's not the worst guy in the world. We just didn't see eye to eye on some stuff. And I made it my goal after realizing, well, one, if I didn't have a good relationship with my troop commander, it's definitely going to affect me, my sanity, but more important than that, it's going to affect my platoon. Because if I don't have a good relationship with him, there's not going to be a lot of trust there. I'm not going to have a lot of room to maneuver as far as different things that I care about with my guys. Things on deployment will probably be affected. So I started to make it my goal to build out as good of a relationship with him as I could. And, there were some of the things that rubbed me the wrong way with him is he would, he had a little bit of an ego too. I did my first tour as well, but he had a little bit of an ego. He had a hard time admitting when he had messed something up or when something was wrong. Would jump to conclusions. That was the one that really got to me, is I felt like I was a pretty squared away guy. The other two platoon commanders were pretty squared away as well. You're our troop commander. If something's wrong, come to us. Let's talk about it. Don't jump to conclusions like we did something on purpose or we're out to, to screw the troop over or something like that. So that really rubbed me the wrong way. So luckily I was wise enough to see, don't avoid, you got to start building this relationship out with him. And I did everything I could to really start to strengthen that relationship. He was a little bit of a micromanager, I felt like, so I started over communicating things with him, including him on all these different emails, updating him all the time, as much as I could, trying to build that relationship out. And over time, throughout the workup, we were able to build out a really good working relationship. Now, every now and then, we still jump to conclusions. There were still some personality things that rubbed me the wrong way, but they definitely got a lot better. And again, if you were to ask him, hey, did you have a frictional relationship with Sean? He probably would have said no. He probably would have said, there's some things we didn't see eye to eye on, but no, I don't think we had a frictional relationship. And to his credit, he was always a big advocate for me, always representing me well up the chain of command. It wasn't like he was petty or vindictive or anything like that. He always had my back up the chain of command. Hey, Sean's good to go, all that stuff. But it was just, if you asked me, do I want to hang out with him or not hang out with him, the answer would have been, no, I don't really. But building that relationship out, it made the situation a whole lot better throughout training. And then what really paid off was we deployed. So first tour, go to Afghanistan. Where do we want to go? Again, we want to go to Afghanistan again, and we want to go to Iraq. That's where every SEAL wants to go. At the time, that wasn't in the cards for us. We were going to what's called the crisis response element, which is a place in the Middle East that they stood up right around the time that Benghazi happened in 2011. And it was basically, we need a force in the Middle East that's capable of responding to a crisis or an emergency if needed. So most of the special operations forces in the military were either deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, and then a handful would still go to a Pacific theater to do some training over there. But they wanted some dedicated force in theater that could respond to different emergencies. So you had 2 SEAL platoons from our troop. You had at the time they were called the SIF platoon. I think now they're the CRIF platoon. It's basically the Green Berets assault troop was there. Lift from TF-160th was there. It was supposed to be this package that we had all the assets that we needed. And when something bad happens, the president or the SecDef would make the call. We'd spin the birds up. We'd load it, and off we'd go to save the day.
That's what the plan is.
It sounds awesome.
It sounds awesome, but it's actually not that cool because it never happens, Echo Charles.
Never. So
almost never.
Yeah, almost never. Come to find out, almost never. But at the time, it had never happened. So one, just trying to keep my platoon motivated that that's where they're going when all of their friends that are in different platoons are going to, I think we sent 4 platoons that tour to Afghanistan. So the majority of the team is going to Afghanistan. So that was a leadership challenge in and of itself, is just getting guys prepared for that and the mindset of it is what it is. and we're going to crush it while we're there, and we're going to be ready even if nothing happens. Nothing ever happens. We get there. Fortunately for us, there was the opportunity for that over the beach mission that we talked about on the last podcast, which was the best mission I was ever a part of as far as an actual SEAL mission set. Like, you're putting everything together on that operation that we trained for. So it was an amazing experience. But there's multiple platoons there that could have done that job. And my platoon got picked, or I got picked to take the guys down there. And I know for a fact the reason I got picked is I had a good relationship with that troop commander.
Yeah, the kind of advancement, I guess, of Echelon Front, and I wrote about in the book Leadership Strategy and Tactics, to this idea of teaching what a relationship is and how to build it. Because for a long time, I was saying, and we were all saying, like, build a relationship, build a relationship, build a relationship. And then when we finally broke down what a relationship is and how you build it, which obviously it's something that we all instinctively did, but just like anything else, instinctively doing something and it works and you go, okay, that's cool. It's really hard to teach someone what your instincts were if you don't identify them and how you made them happen. So, being able to teach people trust, listen, respect, influence, and care. That's what a relationship is. And if you want to build a relationship, you've got to give the other person those things. You've got to give them trust. You've got to listen to what they have to say. You've got to allow yourself to be influenced. You got to treat them with respect, and you got to show them that you care about them. And those are what's beautiful is at work, in a work environment, there is a natural framework for all these things to take place. For you in that case, the guy's a little bit micromanager. Okay, so what do? Tell him, hey, you're micromanaging me and you need to just trust me? No, you don't do that. It doesn't work. You actually listen to him. You actually say, I'm going to give you more information that you need. Hey, boss, that makes sense. Let me make sure that you understand what's happening so you're in the loop. Like, you treat them with respect. Oh, you want me to give you a more detailed plan? Okay. You just allowed them to influence you. You listen to what they have to say. That's what you do. And when you do that thing, you build a relationship. The other piece of this is, I've talked before about when you're in a leadership position, the people that you're working with are the terrain that you're maneuvering through. So that's a big difference in the SEAL teams or in any combat unit, at least for a small unit. For small unit leadership, when like a white belt doesn't know what's happening, a blue belt understands the maneuvers that can take place, but then the purple belt understands how to use those maneuvers in the various terrain and can actually not just use the maneuvers in the terrain, but utilize the terrain to make the maneuvers even better. So when it comes to leadership and humans, and what made me think of this is, you've got your boss. Just like when we're out on the battlefield, I can't move a mountain. I can't shift a ravine to suit my needs. I can't change the human that I'm working with. I have to learn to maneuver. And I have to learn, guy's a little bit of a micromanager. Oh, the guy, what was the other thing you said about him? He
jumped to conclusions.
Jumps to conclusions. Okay, what am I going to do? Fight against that? No. You go, that's the terrain I've got to maneuver around. That's the terrain I actually am going to utilize. I'm going to figure out how to utilize that terrain. If I know this guy jumps to conclusions, I'm going to make sure that when I feed him a little piece of information, I already know what direction he's going to jump and I'm going to be ready for it. So those are some things to think about from the relationship aspect. You're not going to listen. Do people change? Yes, people do change a little bit, sometimes over time, usually after some kind of a traumatic event. Like a traumatic event, people can change. Even it's a traumatic event when Dave calls you like you can't be Batman because you don't want to have a mask on. That's like a little bit of a traumatic event for you. It's one of those things that you can make a little shift, right? But there's other big traumatic people get fired from a job. But I've seen people get fired from a job and just been like, I shouldn't have been fired. Mm-hmm. I had a friend of mine get fired from a SEAL platoon. And he had beef with another guy, and they had the big, showdown, and he ends up getting fired. And I was like, bro, what happened? And he's like, that guy couldn't work with him. And I was like, bro, you just got fired. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever you're saying, you just got fired. That's terrible. It's horrible. And the guy's not a bad guy. Yeah. And he's getting fired. So people aren't going to change. And when you're working for someone and they've got some idiosyncrasies or they've got some little personality traits that you don't like very much, you can't necessarily change them. It's very difficult to change them. And by the way, this goes down the chain of command too. And that's why sometimes the parameters that you got to put on some of your subordinates are parameters that contain or mitigate these idiosyncrasies that people have. You put a little thing on, you got someone that jumps to conclusions that works for you. Hey, if you get into these 4 scenarios, hit me up and let me know what you're doing before you go. You know what I mean? Like, you know that they're going to jump to conclusions. Hey, if you are going to fire anyone, let me know before you fire someone. Or even like, oh, you're going to write, if I got Sean over here and he's a jump to conclusion kind of guy and just writing everybody up, hey, listen, I'm not trying to micromanage you, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page. If you're going to write someone up, just let me know when you're going to do it. That way I can have a conversation. You can be like, dude, you're going to write Echo up like because he was late by 3 minutes? Like, is that the kind of relationship you want to have with this guy? When was the last time he was late? He'd never been late before. And you're going to write, you see what I'm saying? So you can have these conversations. So just important things to keep in mind, man. The trust, listen, respect, influence, and care, the building relationship things, very important. And then human beings are terrain that you're going to have a hard time changing the terrain. You change it a little bit. You can blow some trees to give you a better line of sight, or you can cut down some trees. Mm-hmm. We did that before. Like, hey, just saw down these trees so we have a little better field of view. Put a loophole in a wall. You can do those things, but you're not going to be able to drastically change the terrain, just like you're not going to be able to drastically change some human being and their personality and their instincts. Hey, good luck. Over time, you might have some influence over them.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be an immediate gratification by, hey, what can I say to my boss to get him off my back? Nothing. Nothing. There's not one thing you can say to your boss to get him off your back. What can I say to my subordinate that'll make him start paying? Nothing. There's not one thing. There's not one single thing that you can say. There are some things you can do over time. If someone's got a big ego, you can assign them things that are outside their capacity. If someone lacks confidence, you can assign them things that are within their capacity and let them excel, and those things will be good. But there's not one thing you can say.
Yeah.
So be careful of those things.
Yeah. And then, debriefing is a huge thing. Hindsight, looking at what we could have done better. There was definitely two traits that I had that I could have done better. And he had talents for sure. He was awesome administratively, which at the time, if you were to say what was my weak spot, I probably would have said a little bit of admin for certain things. If it was an award or something that mattered for my guys, like I would put in whatever time I needed to make sure that was done. But there was other things that I didn't pay that much attention to. And as a troop commander, he has the perspective of why that matters. And he was hard on me about that stuff. And then what was my big issue, my first platoon that I just talked about that Dave helped cure? Well, it's not like he said that and it just went away totally. So why did I have such an issue with this troop commander? Troop commander had a little bit of an ego, but what did I have too? Mm-hmm. I had a little bit of an ego. So always micromanaging me. Why is he micromanaging me? I'm a squared away guy.
I just got back from 11 months of combat in Afghanistan.
Come on. Exactly. So
don't worry, I got your script down.
So that was the things that I was doing that were not helping this situation out whatsoever. And luckily I realized, hey, if I go in there ego to ego with my troop commander, it's rock, paper, rank. I lose every single time. And I can't control necessarily his ego, what he had, but I can control my own ego. And what can I do to maybe get him off my back a little bit with some of the administrative stuff and build some trust in the administrative stuff is show him that I'm taking on board what he's saying and provide a little bit better updates and all the other things that he really wanted. So it's not like it was a one-way street of this issue. There was definitely things I was doing to contribute to it.
Yeah, and those relationships, it's so awesome when you have a good relationship, when you build good relationships. I was actually at the dinner table the other night with my daughter, Rana.
I hear good things.
Yeah, hear good things. So for some reason we were talking about the SEAL teams, and she was asking me, well, my kids don't know about, the SEAL teams. Like I don't sit there and talk to my kids about the SEAL teams. And she was like, so wait, so were you in a platoon? She was talking about something. She goes, wait, so were you in a platoon? Oh, it's task unit bruiser, because she went to the muster. She was like, wait, so, and she's working while she's at the muster, so she didn't get to see the whole thing. Anyways, I think the conversation was like, so was task unit bruiser a platoon? And I was like, no. I go, there was 2 platoons in task unit bruiser. And she goes, oh. And then she goes, and Leif was in charge of one of those platoons? And I go, yeah. And then she goes, and Seth was in charge of the other one? And I go, yeah. And you could see she had this look on her face like, oh, are you serious? Like, what a freaking joke.
Yeah.
Like, how fun was that?
Your job.
Yeah. Because she'd known Leif and Seth since she was a little tiny kid. Since what was that? 2005, she met Leif and Seth. And so she's seen us broing out for the past 20 years. And it's like, oh, so these guys that are your bros that you hang out with and have fun with and go surfing with, that's who you worked with all the time. She was like, and you could see the look of like, oh, okay. And then she's like, and JP was there. And I'm like, yeah, and JP was there. And Tony was there. I was like, yeah. And so she starts putting together the picture of like, oh, so it was like awesome. She didn't say that, but she was like, oh, okay, I get it. So yes, relationships are paramount. You get done with that, and then it's Bud's instructor.
Yeah, Bud's instructor, went over there, wanted to do my troop commander right away, but I was way too junior.
There's no way they were.
No, my XO, who was an awesome guy, just when I told him that, he just laughed, literally laughed, and he's like, bro, you are way too junior to do your troop commander spot. So Bud's was the next move after that.
What do you, when you talk to young men right now that want to go to Bud's, how do you tell them to get ready for it?
Run and swim. Yeah. I mean, what I should probably say is if you need me to tell you how to get ready for Bud's nowadays, you probably shouldn't go to Bud's. Like, everything is out there. The Navy has all the information that you need. They have training programs. They have all this stuff. But I just tell them, if they're really asking me honestly, I just tell them run more than you think you need to run and swim more than you think you need to swim.
And then hopefully you'll not quit. That's what I tell them. They say, what do I need to do to get through Bud's or whatever? I'm like, just don't quit.
Yeah.
You legitimately have a really good chance of making you got probably a 95% chance of making it through Bud's. Maybe a 90% chance of making it through Bud's if you don't quit.
Yeah. I would say nowadays that's 100% right, because you won't get to Bud's unless you can physically qualify in the runs and everything you do. If it was back in the day, as you like to say, when they just kind of fed you to Bud's and it was what it was without like a pipeline of knowledge, maybe that number's 80, 70%. Now, like, you don't get to Bud's unless you're in shape enough to get through Bud's.
I think the screening test that I took to get to Bud's, I think I literally, the minimum score on pull-ups was like 6.
Yeah.
6 pull-ups. Bro, if you can only do 6 pull-ups, bro, you're gonna have a hell of a hard time getting through that O course, doing freaking back-to-back rope climbs while you're wet and sandy. Like, it's not gonna be easy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't quit, but be in some good ass shape when you show up there. So then you finally get to your troop commander tour, and so speaking of relationships, how was the relationships rolling to that troop commander tour?
Yeah, I learned you can learn you can learn something from everybody. My first platoon, it was all positive learning. Awesome platoon chief, awesome platoon commander, troop commander Jack Carr, who was amazing as a troop commander and genuinely cared about everybody in the troop, to include the squad commanders, which, being a troop commander, sometimes troop commanders don't really show that much love or pay that much attention to their squad commanders, and that was not Jack. He was definitely involved and, mentoring us and spending time with us. Awesome troop chief. So all the lessons that I learned from them were how to do things, how to conduct yourself.
Yeah, that's a huge point you just made. And I remember you guys going through, but Jack or any troop commander, there's a lot of stuff going on. Yep. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's not just the 40, or if that was a super troop. Was that a super troop?
That platoon was not. It was 2.
So you got 40 mugs. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. You got the command. They're all spinning up. They're trying to figure things out. So there's a lot of things going on. So you can, if you're not careful, you can start looking up and out too much, which you hear me talk about up and out. You got to be looking up and out. But if you're not careful, you're looking up and out too much, and you're not training these young leaders to lead, which is problematic. So, make sure you're investing in your people. Sounds like Jack definitely did that with you.
Yep. And then second tour, we just talked about the troop commander, learned some good stuff from him. Again, administratively, the guy was dialed in, and it definitely helped me out throughout my career to learn from him why it matters, how to do it right, all those different things. I also learned some things from him that were things that I did not want to do with my own troop. I felt like he was a little bit overbearing with how he handled the platoons from time to time, as far as like the issue of the patches and whatnot, platoon identity. Sometimes it was a little bit more like it's just the troop, and I'm like, well, that's great, and we're all about the troop, but like it's okay if the platoons have a little bit of identity themselves and they take pride in being in the platoon, as long as, like you said earlier, it doesn't become frictional. Mm-hmm. The competition doesn't become frictional. As long as we're all 3 troop, that's great. So the lessons that I took going to my troop commander tour were a lot of good things from Jack, and then deliberately wanting to make sure that my platoon commanders felt like they were platoon commanders, because there were times my platoon commander tour where I felt like I had more freedom as a squad commander than I did as a platoon commander at certain times from my leadership. So I wanted to very deliberately make sure that the troop had the troop identity, our standards, ready to rock and roll. We had our 5 troop standards. And what I told our guys was, if you are doing these 5 things at all times, you'll never hear from me about anything other than great job. Like, these are the things that my SCA and I care about. And the guys did them. They stuck to them. It was great. I had great relationships with my platoon commanders, all my platoon chiefs. And again, I was given a huge gift, because I was given 3 really squared away platoon commanders, 3 really squared away platoon chiefs. But then we deploy and we take 2 extra platoons from Team 5 to Iraq with us, because we needed that many platoons inside of Iraq for what was going on at the time inside of Mosul.
Yeah, so this is like 2015, 2016,
Yep.
you go on deployment.
Yep.
And Jason Gardner's your CMC.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys came to my house.
We did.
The troop leadership came to my house for a freaking leadership brief prior to departure.
Yeah. Brought the guys over there, all 5 platoons now, because now I have 5 platoons. And
epic.
It was amazing. I mean, it was troop commander. What else could you ask for, right? So I wanted them to hear, because we were going to go, very likely, we didn't know at the time, obviously, there was a certainty, but the writing was on the wall. We were probably going to end up, at least some of the platoons were going to end up inside of Mosul, heavy urban combat. Obviously, y'all had a ton of experience in that environment. I wanted them to hear from you your big takeaways from that environment, and then your just big takeaways about working in that joint environment where you're Marines, Air Force, Army, and you're playing in their battle space, and then just the lessons that y'all learned over there. It's good for people to hear things from an outside perspective as well, and y'all had a lot of things to offer us. So came over there, you talked to him about Ramadi, asked a bunch of questions. Our guys asked a bunch of questions. It was great. So we deploy. 4 of those platoons, 4 of the platoon commanders, my 3 that I went through workup with, great relationships. Like, I love those guys. One of the guys from the other platoon that we adopted, very easy to get along with, same thing, great guy. He was just fired up to be going to Iraq. They were solid platoon. And the other platoon was great too, but me and the platoon commander did not have as good of a relationship. Now, that was 100% my fault. So I don't really know him that well. Literally, we get given these platoons and then we deploy about a month later. So we deploy, and he goes to an outstation with his platoon, and he's asking for lots of different things to support. And I don't have all these things to give away. I've got now 5 different platoons inside of Iraq that are broken into 7 different outstations. Resources are limited. So as a troop commander, I have to sit up here and try to figure out who really needs this, who really needs that piece of equipment, who really needs these weapon systems, that type of thing. And I made a comment to him. I was busting his chops, which I did all the time with the other platoon commanders. Mm-hmm. But we'd gone through workup together. So they know where it's coming from, and they'd bust my chops right back. And it was just kind of like how guys talk to each other. I should have been more self-aware. Me and this guy did not have that level of relationship. So we're on a call, and I bust his chops. I say something about how needy he is and how he wants everything. And I'm, in my defense, I'm totally just joking. Mm-hmm. It just goes dead silent on the.
Was this just him on the call?
Just him on the call. No, yeah, just him on the call. Just him on the call. Dead silent on the other end, and instantly I'm like, "Oh, I've made a mistake." So he's like, "Well, why do you think I'm needy?" And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." So I try to, hey man, I'm just goofing around.
De-escalate.
Yeah, de-escalate. Yeah, I'm just goofing around, but it wasn't happening. Yeah. Like, he was really offended by it. that really damaged the relationship. I spent the rest of that deployment trying to convince him that I was in his corner. And he doesn't know a lot of these things, and he doesn't need to know a lot of these things, but his personality, it was things that him and Jason and our commanding officer, they didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. So there was some friction at the command level with him as well, but I was 100% sure that he was the right guy to be in the position he was in, because I knew he was very squared away on target, and I knew he wasn't going to allow his guys to take risks that they shouldn't be taking in an environment where they definitely could have done things that they shouldn't have been doing inside of Mosul with not a lot of oversight. I knew he had the respect of his guys. I knew his platoon chief had the respect of his guys, and I knew that he was not going to allow them to do things that they should not be doing. So he was the right guy for that job. There was a time where I was sitting down in Jason's office, in the commanding officer's office, and the commanding officer was to the point to where he wanted to relieve him.
Really?
Yeah. And the relationship, I have a great relationship with Jason. I have a great relationship with my commanding officer. And I said, hey, sir, I can completely understand why you feel that way. But if you can just take on board what I'm saying, here's why I think he's the right person for this job. And let me just try and mitigate as much of the personality things as we can. And I laid out my case, and like a good commanding officer, he trusted the guy that was closest to the problem. And he said, okay, he's yours. You've got to manage it, but I'm not going to relieve him. I don't tell this guy this. I'm never going to tell him that. Like, he doesn't need to know that stuff. But I spent that whole deployment trying to convince him that I was supporting him, that I was there for him, that I was trying to enable him to be, do the best job he can inside Mosul. And I don't know if I ever got through to him or not. I know for a fact the reason that relationship soured is because that joke that I cracked. And look, if we had gone through training together and I had that 18 months with him, it would have been no big deal. But we didn't have a relationship, and I crossed the line, and he just took it the wrong way, and the next 6 months was rough for me and him.
I was just kidding. It's real hard. That's a real hard.
Pull that round back.
Yeah, that's like what do they say when you that's exactly when you fire your weapon, you can't pull that, you can't bring that round back into the gun. It's out. And unfortunately, when you open your mouth, you can't bring those words back in. And especially when the weight that you have when you're in a leadership position, and the words that you say carry so much more weight, and oftentimes people don't realize how much weight the words that they say. I learned that on a steady learning curve throughout my career. You know, where, because I was an E4 in the days back in the day, dude. I mean, there was literally not one thing that was filtered coming out of my mouth talking shit to the other guys in the platoon. Not one single thing would be filtered ever. And that's the way every single guy in a platoon was. The E4, E5 mafia. It used to be E4 mafia, by the way, Echo Charles, because back in the day we weren't getting the E5 for nothing. So it was E4. You're just gonna, any chink in the armor that you saw on one of your friends, it was attack mode all day long. And then as I got more and more senior, I realized, I'd like say something to some guy like, good shooting, knucklehead. And you could see like, if I said that to my peer, good shooting, knucklehead, they'd be like, let's see you, they'd talk shit back. But when you're in the platoon commander and then a troop commander, it's like you say, hey, good shooting, knucklehead. And they look at you like, I let my boss down, or, now I'm going to get a baddie. I mean, just crazy thoughts. So you definitely have to be, careful about the weight of your words as you increase your level of responsibility in the chain of command.
The last, I would say, month, things got better. And the reason things got better was he was in Mosul with his platoon doing awesome stuff. Command Master Chief and our CO, one of them had to be in Mosul at all times per the general's orders inside of Iraq. One of them had to be in Mosul, kind of C2ing some different things, commanding and controlling different things. So Jason was up there, and again, he had a frictional relationship with the CO, so they had a little exchange. And the guy is super squared away, super smart guy, great at his job, but just, sometimes probably picking and choosing the right battles is what I would define it as with a commanding officer. And it kind of escalates, and this is what Jason's telling me. And, Jason's like, he says he's not getting any support. He's not getting any support from his troop leadership, all these other things. And Jason just looks at him and goes, the only reason you're here, is because Sean stood up for you when the boss wanted to fire you. And it was like, to him, I wasn't there, so this is Jason. And of course I trust Jason. He said it was kind of, took the guy back. These discussions went on. And Jason's like, he's been the only guy at the leadership level that's consistently been in your corner. So maybe pump the brakes a little bit. After that, Jason didn't tell me that happened until after the tour. But the last month, he was getting ready for a green team at the time too. So I would call him and just ask him, how's the workouts going? Are you able to stay in shape? How's the ops going? Things like that. And I noticed there was a little bit of a shift. It was more of a conversation versus just 1 and 2 word answers. And then come to find out, Jason had a little heart to heart with him. And I think it got him back in my corner a little bit, but it still wasn't great.
Yeah. I have like rules, like no joking on the radio. You've heard Leif talk about that. Like with me, I was like, you are not now, even like on inter squad radios, I'm like, don't make jokes on these radios, and certainly not on any freaking like battalion net or brigade net, company net. Like never make any jokes. But that's a good rule. And you hear Leif talk about the fact that like I didn't joke with those guys for 8 weeks when I met them. And it's like, yeah, dude, you got to be careful, and you can't reel those things back in. And so you got to be careful. I was a young SEAL, and there's on ships, on Navy ships. You ever been on a Navy ship before?
Oh, yeah.
What'd you do on a Navy ship?
So our first deployment was supposed to be the Cree deployment. We went to Afghanistan. It was supposed to be Cree. So our entire workup was basically MAROPS focused, and then all of our TJET, the last phase of training, and then G20 Summit PSD protection for the president at the time. Spent 2.5 weeks on the Peleliu. So I don't have a lot of time, but during that time frame, I had more time than most SEALs on a ship.
I had a lot of time on a Navy ship as a SEAL. And there's a thing on the Navy ships called Navy Red. And it's basically a radio frequency that goes in between all the ships in the little fleet that you're with. So you got like 6 or 7 Navy vessels. And on the bridge where the commander of each ship sits and where the freaking admiral has piped into his room is this Navy Red, this is the one common frequency for the whole little fleet that's out there. And it's not called a fleet. Leif's going to be like, it's not a fleet, dude. It's a battle group. Like it's a battle group, okay? Or like the ARG, the amphibious ready group. So whatever little group that you're with. There you go, Leif. They have this Navy Red thing. So we were planning some op, and our task unit commander was over on the mothership. And so we're planning this op, and my assistant platoon commander, he's a Naval Academy guy and super smart and very squared away, and kind of quiet. So and for whatever reason, this op, like, we had some big major change in the op, and we're going to do this, it was like helicopters, and now we're using boats. It was some major change, and we had to get comms really quick. And for whatever reason, he got called to the bridge to get on Navy Red and communicate with our task unit commander. And the task unit commander tells him whatever he tells him. And this Naval Academy guy who's totally squared away, who's quiet and humble, he goes, he says, you're going to be using boats. Hey, sorry, you guys are going to be using boats now instead of vessels. You got to have the boats ready or instead of helos, you got to have the boats ready in an hour and a half. And my assistant platoon commander goes, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, over. And it was like the whole freaking bridge. Everyone's just like, oh, yeah, he got some shit for that. So, yes, be careful when you're cracking jokes. Look, I like to have fun. I like to have fun as much as the next guy. Which you're in a leadership position, you get this, the fun and the joking has definitely got to take a back seat to what's going down in as far as your leadership role goes. So be careful. What else about that deployment as a troop commander? I know you guys did that op where you guys rolled in, or one of your platoons rolled in for those SAS guys.
Yeah.
Did we talk about that on the
No,
last
we
podcast?
did not.
Oh,
I don't know how I left that one out.
that's a good one.
Yeah, it is, because I mean, SAS guys are just man,
Legit.
legit is the only word.
Yep.
The only word for them. So they're up there, small group of them. I think it was only about 8 guys, are up in outskirts of Mosul, and they're running their own ops.
Just FYI, the British as a whole are freaking professional. They are the British military is so professional. And I haven't worked with a ton of them, but I've worked with the SBS and I've worked with the SAS. And they're freaking outstanding. Mm-hmm. They're just freaking outstanding. So, and then when the SAS is just another level.
It's what all of our SOF is based on.
All based on the SAS.
Yeah. SAS laid the groundwork for everything, and they're respected for a reason.
Yep.
Respected for a reason. And just that Brit mentality is just a different mentality too. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, just
yes, I do. I know it well.
Yeah. Just a different mentality. So they're up there in Mosul, and they're running their own ops. And I think Development Group had a couple of guys up there as well, not working with him, but they were running some ops as well. Much higher level operations than what we were running. And one of my platoons was closest to them geographically. So they were the SAS's QRF whenever the SAS would roll out, and then SAS at times would be our QRF whenever our guys would roll out. They had a real good relationship with each other. Spent time with each other at the different bases, built out a good relationship. So anytime they needed someone to be on the hook to be the quick reaction force, which is basically we got an operation plan, we're going to do the operation, something does not go right, we need reinforcements. The first step is call the quick reaction force. So you don't go out without having a QRF prepped and ready. So when they go out, if my platoon is the QRF, obviously that means they're not going out. That means everybody's there, jocked up, ready to roll in case something goes down. So SAS rolls into Mosul in thin-skinned vehicles, 4 of them with their Terp, which just right away you're like, the SAS, legit. Just a different mentality. And this is during the height of the Mosul clearance. Damn. So ISIS controls all of Mosul at this point in time. We have not made that much ground inside of Mosul. They go in to do their thing, and they basically, I don't know if they got lost or if they got cut off, but they got cut off and isolated in a compound, and things were going south real quick. So they called our platoon to come and react, to come try to help them out. Our platoon load up their big up-armored vehicles. They look like, the giant tanks on wheels, basically. And they roll into Mosul to try and help these SAS guys out. By the time that our guys got to their general position, not even in the compound, the general position, there was ISIS guys peppering them from like 2 blocks away. And, they've got small arms fire. That's all they really got. But they're definitely handling their own, but they needed that QRF. It got so dicey that our guys had to find a wall that was weak enough that they could push down with one of their vehicles, because they couldn't even maneuver to the front to help them out because it was just too much fire coming in. So this is a sketchy situation, like a super sketchy situation for these SAS guys to be in. Like they're in complete... they're about to get overrun is what's about to happen. As good as they are, it's just a numbers game at this point in time. So our guys get there. They drive over some walls, through some walls, knock them down, get into the compound finally, and pick these guys up. And
did they leave their vehicles?
I don't know. I think they did.
Damn.
But I'm not positive. Don't quote me on that. I'm not positive. They get there, door pops open, guy hops in, and like it's no big deal whatsoever. Straight up just goes, "Hey, thanks for the lift, mate." like it wasn't a big thing that they were in this running gun battle
about to be overrun.
With all of ISIS inside of Mosul about to be overrun. So just legit. I mean, what else can you say besides just legit? And then it just cracks me up, that Brit mentality of it is what it is.
And you end up losing one of your EOD guys over there.
Yeah, JJ. That was right as the clearance was kicking off, and we talked about this, but we only had 2 dedicated EOD guys. And again, as a troop commander, you're trying to figure out where's the best place to put your dedicated EOD assets, because you've got 7 outstations that could all use highly trained Navy EOD guys that have gone through your workup with you, that have gone through your assaults training with you, that know all of your SOPs. So I was trying to figure out where to really put this amazing asset. And one of our platoons just kept getting in these IED issues where they were complex IED issues, to include incoming rounds that had chemical agents inside of them, to where such an extent that our guys couldn't roll out without at least having their chem stuff with them. I don't think they ever put it on, but they had to have it with them because some of the rounds that were coming in had some, chlorine gas or something in it. So it was sketchy. So I made the call to put the EOD assets up there because that's where they were needed most. And then during the initial stages of the clearance, as they're trying to get to Mosul, so at that point in time, they'd gotten close to the city, but not to the city. They got to get, obviously, into the city to start clearing everything out. So they're trying to push big operation to try to get the entire coalition force to Mosul so that then we could take about a week break, prep everything, and then start the clearance. So crazy kinetic day, lots of different gun battles, and they were in a position and they realized that the enemy was maneuvering to take some high ground and they were about to be in a really bad spot. So they made the call, hey, we've got to make a move from here, get to a different piece of terrain. Platoon chief made the call, identified some terrain. They start driving in their up armored vehicles to get where they need to go. And JJ, our EOD chief, is in the lead vehicle and he's doing his best to spot from the passenger seat. So he sees something ahead that he thinks looks like an IED and he calls an all stop. Everybody stops. And then he, kind of identifies it's definitely an IED. And what he realizes is he's pretty sure they just drove into a minefield. So he makes the call, hey, we've got to reverse out. And the best thing to do is just try to keep exactly in the same tread that you're in. Because if you drove in that way, the thought process is obviously you're probably safe by going back out that direction. So my platoon chief pops his door open and he starts to spot for the driver. And JJ says, hey, that's my job. That's not your job. He makes the platoon chief close his door. JJ pops his door open. He's spotting for the guys. And I don't know if it just didn't go off the first time or maybe they just barely missed it, but they ran over a pressure plate and JJ was spotting with his head outside the door, half his body outside the door, trying to make sure that guys were getting out safe. And he just took the full force of that blast. And the guys went to work on him, did some heroic things in the middle of a firefight, but it just wasn't going to happen. He expired within about 2 hours.
What was your plan when you came home from that deployment?
I wanted to do another troop commander tour because I was very junior. So I asked my commanding officer and he laughed at me and said, no, you can stay around and be the ops boss if you want to do that, but you're not going to do another troop commander tour. So didn't want to leave Team 5, loved it. So did the ops job for a little bit before getting bounced over to Trident.
So you're over there at Trident for a couple of years. We talked about that last time you were here. Got out. You did your startup thing. Again, these are things we covered on that last time, but eventually start over at Echelon Front.
Yeah.
Having a good time?
Oh, loving it. Yeah. I was just up in New York with Cody for a couple of days working with some of New York's finest. I mean, what's not to love about that?
Freaking outstanding. And then you got Primal Beef going on. Mm-hmm. What's the progress there at Primal Beef?
Yeah, I've been going for about 1.5 years now. Everything's solid. And when we started the company, we wanted simple is the thing that we teach. So what we tried to do was keep it as simple as we possibly could until we figured out basically logistically what's the best way to make sure that you don't want any part of the cow to go to waste. What does everybody want when they want beef?
Ribeye.
Everybody wants ribeye. Everybody wants steak. You only get about 26 ribeyes from a cow. You get about 26 New York strips, and you get about 18 fillets. You get a lot of ground beef, and then you get some different awesome cuts that fly under the radar sometimes. Your flank steak, your bavette steak, your hanger steaks, all of those are awesome, but they're lesser known cuts. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to make sure that
I've been eating all those steaks. They're freaking good.
Yeah.
I mean, you go into a restaurant, A, they might not have them, but B, if it's ribeye or flank steak, like I'm just going to get the ribeye just out of habit and out of go with what you know, right? So I really didn't start eating some of these other cuts until you started sending me these boxes filled with them, and I'd be like, oh yeah, good to go.
Dude, the flat iron steak, it's become my favorite steak. Now, if you still put a ribeye in a flat, I'm eating both of them, but the flat iron is amazing.
Yeah, that flat iron thing's ridiculous.
It's so good, but you get one per cow, so it's a scarce resource, if you will. So we were trying to keep things very simple and try to figure out the best way to make sure we're honoring the entire animal and not wasting or not able to move some of those different cuts. So we built out some boxes. And we tried to make the boxes the best value we could for the customer with the best cuts they could get in there, but then also make it to where X amount of boxes made a whole cow, basically. So we wanted to keep things very simple. The feedback we got from everybody that's tried the beef is they love it. And the feedback we kept getting was we'd like to pick whatever we want to put in the box. So we made the change. We redesigned a new website because lesson learned. Our old website did not really allow us to do a lot of customization. So that's probably my biggest lesson learned from it is I should have done more research ahead of time, knowing it's an e-commerce platform, and really look into what website designs, what companies are really meant for e-commerce. We went with one that wasn't really made for e-commerce, and it just didn't allow a lot of customization, which meant we couldn't give some certain options to the customers that we really wanted to give. So we scrapped the old website, built a whole new website out. So now,
what are you on now?
Now it's Shopify.
Yeah. I really apologize for not telling you to go with Shopify because I've made transitions at Origin USA to Shopify, made transition to Jocko Fuel at Shopify, and those are big, massive websites with big, massive e-commerce. And the guys at Shopify are freaking really awesome. And there's a reason why their platform is an outstanding platform. Like they have great attitudes. Echelon Front has worked with Shopify, so they're just they get it. And I wish I would have told you that, whatever it was, a year and a half ago.
I wish I would have asked you that. I was like, we got this figured out. No big deal. Website's a website. What's that? So now, because the new website allows us to basically do whatever we want, our goal has always been, one, to give Americans the best beef they can get their hands on, period. And we want to give it to them in a way that they want. So the boxes were great for the time to help us start the company up. They're still there. They're never going away. And people will still order those boxes. But now we made a couple of smaller sampler size boxes. So it's got the same cuts, but about half the samples, because for some reason, 15 pounds of beef, some people have a hard time eating that within a month. For me, that's like a week supply of beef. But some people don't want 20 pounds of beef a month. So we built some boxes that are about 7 or 8 pounds, got all the great cuts in there. And then the thing that I'm really excited about as far as the steak and the beef options is we have a build your own box now. So now it's 10 items. Whatever 10 items you want to put in that box is what we're going to give you. Now, I know what most everybody's reaction is. I know what your reaction is going to be is I'm putting 20 ribeyes in there.
Yeah.
But now there's no such thing as a bad cut of beef, and there's definitely no such thing as a bad cut of primal beef. And all these different steaks are awesome.
They're freaking
ribeyes
amazing.
Are great. A flank steak is great. A flat iron steak is ridiculously
flank
good.
Steak is ridiculously good.
Yeah.
Ridiculously good.
And it's versatile. Steak, eat it as a steak. Make some tacos. Make some whatever.
You're going to see some the Shopify platform. This is just like on the top of my head. I just have this stat. We at Jocko Fuel, we went from one of the other ones to Shopify. We used to have 70% abandoned carts.
In the cart?
70%. So people would fill up a cart and then just abandon it. And when we got Shopify, it's now down to like 30%. Just think of that. That's like crazy. But you're going to see some real improvements and all kinds of stuff.
Hell yeah.
And it's good. Take care of people, get them what they want.
Yeah. We've not had one piece of feedback that's like, we don't like the steak. We don't like the beef. All the feedback we've got is, we love you guys. We love what you're doing. The steak's amazing. Thanks for supporting the troops. Can I buy a bunch of ribeyes? Can I buy a bunch of strips? So now they have that option. The other thing that's great is if you like those other boxes and you want those other boxes, they're still there. And now we have add-on options too. So you build your box out, you get to go check out, and maybe we're going to run a sale that week on brisket, and you want to throw a brisket in there too. Cool. Throw a brisket in there as well. It might come in a different box because briskets are big, but you can still throw it in there. And then another thing that we're super excited about that we've been working on for a long time and being really, really picky about this is the jerky that we got coming out.
I don't understand what you did to the jerky that makes it the way it is. It doesn't taste normal. Like, I mean, obviously it's beef jerky, but damn, it's good. So like I got mail, right?
Yeah.
I get mail at the house, and my wife like put the jerky. I was out of town. She put the jerky, and I guess you told her.
I did.
You told her, like, she wrote a note on it. It says like, don't eat this. Sean wants you to do something with it when it comes out or something like this. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, she staged it in my office, right?
Mistake one.
Yeah, mistake number one. And a lot of times, I get done working out in the morning, shower, get done, and I'm like jumping onto a call. So I'm jumping onto a call. And so now I've been up for like 4 hours, worked out, ran, and I'm hungry, and I'm staring at freaking this beef jerky. And quite frankly, I was like, well, it's beef jerky. Look, when you Echo Charles,
yes.
When you hear beef jerky, does your mouth start to water?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I wasn't like, oh hell yeah, but I was like, you know what? I'm real hungry right now, and I know it says do not eat until Sean tells you can eat it, but I'm just gonna get in there a little bit. Let's just see what these things
just
are.
one, yeah, just
bro.
one.
I freaking powered through like 3 bags. It's delicious. So I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to a couple different things. One is the quality of beef in the jerky is going to matter a ton. So almost all the jerky, if you go to a gas station, that's all commodity beef. Commodity beef meaning it's still beef. It's still a cow. Beef is awesome, but you don't know what kind of cow it is. You don't know where it was raised. You don't know what it was eating. You don't know any of that stuff. So
what are the chances it's from the Shenandoah Valley?
About 0.
And what are the chances that it's grass-fed and fruit finished?
Again, about 0. And most of the time, it's probably a dairy cow, and the dairy cow just can't produce milk anymore. And that unfortunately for that cow, they're not just going to let it live a peaceful life out to pasture because of all the milk it produced. It's going to get processed. Dairy cows, if you've seen them, they're not beefy cows. They're massive cows, but they're meant for dairy production, so they don't put a lot of weight on. It's probably that, or it's some other commodity beef. So the biggest thing is it's still Primal Beef. It's good cuts from Primal Beef, and the quality of beef going into it matters a ton. The second thing is do yourself a favor next time you get a package of jerky and just turn that thing around and read the ingredients that are in that jerky. There's probably 15, if not more, and you probably can't pronounce a whole lot of those different things. And there's things, so when you're making jerky, you dehydrate the jerky. Something has to go in there to bind it together and keep it from completely dehydrating. What a lot of beef jerky producers will do is they'll use some type of canola oil or some type of vegetable oil because it's cheap and it's going to keep that moist throughout the process. What we did is I told them, hey, I want the fewest ingredients you can possibly get in this, and it all has to be clean ingredients. You can't put any nonsense. You can't put any garbage in here. So the other thing that I think makes it something special and makes it so good is what's in it and then what's not in it as well. So if you look at the back of our original jerky, the ingredients are beef, spice, brown sugar, which is what we used to bind it, a little bit of brown sugar to keep it moist, and that's it. My wife buys beef jerky, she used to, from Costco, big bag, because we got 5 kids, they love jerky, and I looked at the back of it, there's 30 ingredients on the back of them. Like, it's beef jerky. There should be 1 or 2 or 3 ingredients. So even if you look at the ones that we have that are a little bit flavored, if you look at our sweet and spicy,
this is ridiculous.
there's like 5 ingredients in there. There's honey, there's brown sugar, there's tamari, which is a derivative. It's not soy sauce, but it's got a similar flavor. I did not want any soy sauce in there for lots of different reasons, but one is I love my wife. She has celiac disease. She can't have soy sauce because soy sauce has wheat in it. Has a lot of things in there we don't need. So for lots of different reasons, I said no soy, which was a bit of a back and forth with the beef jerky producer, who's a Marine, awesome guy, started his own company. They're doing great stuff right now. So small batch jerky. But he's like, you gotta, like, everybody puts soy in. That's what makes it so moist and everything. And I was like, I'm pretty confident the quality of the beef is going to keep it moist. And I don't want a lot of soy sauce in there, one, because I think it overpowers a lot of the different flavors. Not a big fan of soy to begin with. And the last piece was my wife can't have it if it's got soy in there. So tamari's richer. It's got more of that umami flavor without a lot of the nonsense in it. So if you look at the back of the sweet and spicy, it's beef, tamari, brown sugar, spice, and honey. That's it.
It sounds like these are the kind of things that are going to help make America healthy again.
I would agree.
So
more jerky.
You got RFK rolling in.
Yeah.
And as a guy that's involved in food, what do you think? And farming.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What does RFK bring? RFK Jr. bring to the table?
Time will tell, but I think good things. I think his mentality is kind of getting food back to what food should be, and strip out a lot of the things that should not be in our food, a lot of the things that are created in a lab, red 40, yellow, whatever, all these different things. But two, there's also just been a lot of regulation that makes it hard for smaller farms to compete. And it also makes a lot of, I'll give you an example. So, the raw milk stuff, whatever your take is on raw milk. It's not even like we can apply for a permit and get it tested and all these other things. It's just, most places it's just straight up illegal to sell raw milk.
Is it still illegal?
Most places. Yeah.
I don't know. We got some kind of raw milk supply going
there's
on
ways
in my
to
family.
look, there's ways to get it.
Maybe I don't need to say this on the air. Maybe
hold
we
on.
need to edit this out. But we
have
get
some
that
knocks
raw
on the
milk
door
together.
No, so here's how people will get around it, which again, this is just silly. It's silly to make people do this. You can buy a share of, this is probably what you're doing. You can buy a share of a cow. So I can't sell you raw milk, but you can buy a cow with me. And if that cow produces raw milk, I can give you the milk from it. Oh, interesting. It's just a piece of legislation that just makes it more difficult for people to do
It's like
things.
the gun control laws where you have to have these, you can't have a certain thing, and so they make a thing to go over the thing that makes you be able to do the thing that they don't want you to do. It's freaking ridiculous.
Like we could just remove this thing.
Yeah.
And then if we need to put in some things for health and safety concerns, that's fine.
Yeah.
But people are going to find a way around it. And there's just really just no reason for a lot of those different things. Another thing that is coming in with the new administration with the Make America Healthy Again push is Joe Salatin, who is, he didn't create regenerative farming, but he's definitely the leading voice in the states for regenerative farming, which is basically traditional farming practices that are good for the animal, good for the land, and good for the consumer. So he's been named an advisor to the USDA, which again, we'll see what happens, but that's a great step in the right direction for a guy who cares very much about small farms going into the USDA with an outside perspective of, let's show you some of the roadblocks that you're putting on these farmers. And there's no reason, there's reasons why it's happening, but there's really no reason for this. There's less beef being produced in America now than there has been in the last 70 years. So,
and that's because of the regulatory environment?
Some of it is regulatory. It makes it very difficult for small farms and even really big farms to make a living. Part of it is it's so difficult for these farmers and ranchers to make a living. Their kids see this and they don't take over the farm. So the average age of the American farmer right now is mid-60s because the kids aren't taking over the farm. And that's historically been what happens. You know, I've got 5 kids. If one of them wants to take over the farm one day in the business, that would be amazing. I'm not going to force them to do that, but that would be a goal. It's there for them to take a part of. But there's just so many things that are making it difficult for them to earn any type of living without massive subsidization that the kids just aren't doing it. Yeah. They're leaving. So you've got this, and beef consumption has not gone down. So now what do we do? Because of those policies, we get stuff from overseas, or the producers that are growing beef are forced to do things that probably they don't even want to do to make as much beef as they can, hormones, different stuff like that. And I'm not bashing that farming system whatsoever. Like, those are good Americans that are producing beef that the country needs.
People need, yeah.
But I bet if you asked them if that's really what they wanted to be doing, I bet they would say it's not how my Pops did it. That's not how my granddad did it. This is just the system. So I think an outside perspective and maybe a common sense look at some of that legislation will help. And then just anything in farming, the reason that beef specific, and beef is at an all-time high price-wise, which, by the way, we have not adjusted the prices of Primal Beef. Like, we're just absorbing this because we want to make sure the customer gets the most value. But I'll give you an example. Last year, my own personal herd on my farm, we do a cow-calf operation, which means we have some cows, we have a bull. You know, the cows have their calves. We raise the calves to a certain age, and then we take them to our local livestock auction, and we sell them to different farmers from around the area who will buy them and then either finish them on grass or they'll finish them on something else and then sell them. So we just do cow-calf. Last year, an average price for a calf for me would be, everything is by the pound. So we call it live weight. So what's the live weight of the cow? A good steer for me would bring in about $1.50 a pound. So 700-pound steer, I'd be making, what's that? You know, a little less than $1,100, something like that. Now, this year, average steer, just, you know, he's nothing wrong with him, but he's just not big bodied, the genetics aren't there, whatever. It's like $2.80. And I was selling multiple steers for over $3. Nothing has changed with those cows over the course of the last couple of years, but everything to do with farming in general, it all comes back to energy prices. Everything that has to go with making a ranch run and making a farm run is heavily dependent upon what's happening with energy costs. So if fuel is expensive, then the farmer can't just eat that cost. That has to go into the cost of those goods, whether it's beef, whether it's produce, whatever it is, those things. The farmers are not greedy. They're not making any more money than they were before, but now they're paying $4 a gallon, $5 a gallon for diesel versus $3.50. That affects the price of all the different produce, all the different beef. So typically in a market, when things go up, they don't come back down. I don't know for certain, but I would be very hopeful that maybe some of this, at least with the beef industry, will start to self-regulate when the farmer's not paying $5 a gallon to fill their tractor up.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're heading in that direction where we become a little bit more energy independent around these parts in the coming several years. And then you were talking about, you know, kids hopefully taking over the farm. You know, again, you're not going to force them, but let's talk a little bit about these kids and raising kids.
Yeah.
Perhaps, I guess it is the most important job we got, right? Being a dad. How's that going? I know you put together a group recently at church.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that? What do you got going on there?
Yeah. So we call it the Forge because we felt like we had to have a name for it. Mm-hmm. So we call it the Forge, and it's basically meant to give an environment. We do it once a month on the first Fridays, and it's meant to give an environment where dads from around the community can come with their sons, and we can very deliberately teach our kids some skills and also talk to them about some things that we think are important, some virtues, some masculinity type things, those type of stuff. So we felt like it was necessary. We've all had those conversations with our kids, but sometimes it can feel a little bit forced. But if you have this environment where, like, that's kind of the goal of it, is to get everybody there and talk about these things and share our different lessons learned. That was kind of the genesis of it, was to give the men in our community an environment where we could get together, enjoy each other's company, teach our kids some skills that we want them, our sons some skills that we want them to have, and then also pour into them some lessons learned and some things to think about that we think will be very important to them as they, you know, progress throughout their journey to becoming a man. So that was
what's an example of something that you told the boys, like the story? What'd you tell them the lesson learned was?
Yeah. So we had a big talk about service and the importance of using your abilities, whatever that is, using your strength, using your abilities, whatever it is, in the service of others. Because I think there's a little bit of a push in our society for a lot of selfishness and a lot of, you know, what can people do for me, that type of thing. So I feel like a big part of being a male, and I'm not saying this doesn't go for females too, but I think a big part of being a male is being able to do things for other people and serve other people. I mean, we joined the military for probably lots of different reasons, but I'm sure the call to serve and wanting to serve was a big thing. And for me, there's a trade-off, because I didn't really realize this until I was a little bit older, but you actually get a lot in return for your service. you do something good for somebody else, yes, it benefits them. It's at least the same benefit for you in the long run, for how it makes you feel, all those different things. So we wanted to teach the boys about service and having a very deliberately servant mindset. So we had a talk, and it was a little bit cheesy, but it made a big impact on the kids. I had a cool knife from Winkler, who does the tomahawks for all Jack Carr's books and movies. But he was famous because his knives were the knives used and tomahawks were used in Last of the Mohicans. So I have this amazing blade from Winkler. And I brought it. I was showing it to the kids, and I said, hey, here's this awesome knife. I gave him the backstory of it. And then I also showed him this scar that I have on my hand. And I said, hey, if I was just to ask you guys, which one of these would you rather have? Which one would you say? Would you rather have a scar, or would you rather have this sick knife? And of course, what do all the boys say? And they're like, well, we want the knife. I think half of them thought I was going to give them the knife, which, sorry, boys, it's not happening. They said the knife. And I said, well, I understand why you say that, but if I was given the choice between this knife, which means a lot to me because it was a gift from a teammate, or this scar, I would take this scar, and let me tell you why. And I told them a story about how I got this scar, was working on a farm with my neighbor, Dan, who was getting up in age at the time and needed some help. So I went over to help him. Little kid, I probably was more of a hindrance to this dude than I was in actual help. But I was trying to help him out, and I cut it open on a barbed wire fence, and it left this scar on my hand. But when I look at that scar 30 years later, it just reminds me of the time that I got to spend with this guy, and at least as much of a 10-year-old can try to help this guy out, and how much it meant to him that I was coming over there and trying to help him out. So it's a little bit cheesy of a story, but it resonated with the boys of like, what's more important in life? It's not the things you accumulate. It's not, what you have in your closet. It's not what you have in your driveway. It's the impact that you leave on other people. And a great way to do that is through service. So that was the talk. And what we always do is talks have to be short. Some of these kids are pretty little, so the attention span
4 minutes, 7 minutes.
You got go. You got to make an impact. We try to pair the talk with whatever the activity is going to be. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it was a service talk. So there was a blind lady at our church who obviously can't do a lot of things around the house for herself. So we went over to her house and we did a whole bunch of yard work, cleared the backyard, replaced some sections of fences, and the boys just loved it. They absolutely loved it. So that's kind of the theme of it, is we have a virtue or a talk that we want to give them, something to think about, and then we try to pair it with some type of skill. We did a talk on stewardship and what it means for a man to take care of your family, take care of the land, provide for your family. One of our good buddies runs a tree clearing company. I just happened to have a 120-foot oak tree that came down in the last storm that we had. So he brings all these way overpowered chainsaws over, and we got a bunch of little maniacs running around with, expert grade steel 90cc chainsaws chopping up this tree under our supervision. So the boys dig it. They love the activity. Do the talks really resonate with a lot of them? I don't know. Half the times I get home with my sons and I'm like, what do we talk about? And like, but we're trying.
Knife.
Yeah, knife. Exactly. We talked about a knife, and you giving me that knife one day. But no, the boys, it does resonate with the boys, and most importantly, it gives us time as dads to very deliberately spend with our sons, teaching them, which we've all got busy schedules. And if you're not deliberate about it, sometimes those things just don't happen.
And then you've got the rugby club, the boxing club. What's that all about?
Yeah, rugby club. I actually got a text thread started just right before I came on about rugby club's about to kick off again. So some dads in the community, the school that our kids go to have a rugby team, but then we also wanted to build kind of a community-based rugby club that we could put together a big enough roster to one day to compete against some of the school or some of the clubs that are up in like the DC area. So a couple of dads started it up. I don't know a lot about rugby. I lived in a tiny town in Texas where rugby was, surprise, surprise, not a thing. So I'm learning about it, and then I just help out as much as I possibly can with the rugby club. You give me a drill to run, I can run that drill all day long with the boys. But again, it's just a community of dads that are, most of them have played rugby growing up, at least to the high school level.
How come there's kids that, like adults that played rugby as kids?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, East Coast. Most of them are East Coast guys.
Huh.
Yeah, and it is if you've never been big on the rugby environment, it's, in my opinion, after seeing lots of different sports, it's the best team sport that a boy can play. And here's why.
Good coverage for yourself.
You're
about to get
team
wrestling
sport.
and jiu-jitsu. Yeah, you did good.
Yeah, team sport. And the reason why I think that is multifaceted, but the prime one is it is the epitome of a team sport. The entire philosophy of rugby is I have to hold on to the ball just long enough to take the hit from you so that I can dish it off to my teammate last minute in hopes that he can make a move. So there's no selfishness in it. And it doesn't matter how good you are at rugby. There's a lot of players on the field. There's no one person that's going to take over a rugby match. There's no Michael Jordan. The best rugby player in the world is not going to take that match over. It is 1,000% a team effort, and it's just a grind. You're just grinding it out yard after yard after yard. You get hit, doesn't matter how hard, you got to get back up. You got to be there to support your teammate. And the whole philosophy of the game is I'm taking the hit so that you can get a couple of extra yards. It's also exceptionally respectful. There's no ego allowed on the field whatsoever. There's two people that are allowed to even communicate with a referee, and it's the captain from each team. Anybody else says a word to the ref, done off the field. And if you communicate with the referee and it's not in a respectful manner, yes, sir, no, sir, can I talk to you about this, sir? Same thing, you're going to get booted off of the field. So you've got all of these just savages getting after it, injuries galore, blood everywhere, and then they're just being super respectful at the same time. They're grinding it out against each other on the pitch. The second that the game's over, both teams are hanging out, talking about, hey, it was a great hit. So I think for a boy, best team sport you can play because there's nothing about that game that's about you. Everything is about the team.
That's good to know. It definitely is growing in America.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because part of it is, there's some negativity around football right now with the CTE.
Yeah.
Right? Echo Charles, CTE. Yeah. How familiar are you with rugby?
Not very.
Not very.
I did a video. This is rugby league. It's different. In Australia with the Gold Coast Titans. It was actually the relationship between jiu-jitsu and rugby. And the Titans are taking jiu-jitsu from one of Hicks and Gracie's black belt named Jason Robig. And he's teaching the rugby guys jiu-jitsu, and it helps. Because a big part of it when you get tackled to get back up real quick is like a big advantage if you can do it quick. So they do all these drills. It's really cool.
Do you think there's more head trauma in football or in rugby?
I don't know, but it would seem like it would be football because you have helmets on, so you're less like in rugby, it's like you're not going to go head to head on purpose.
No. They purposely, you can't high tackle in rugby. I know you're not supposed to high tackle even in the NFL anymore, but which still happens. But in rugby, anything above basically the upper chest line is illegal. But they spend a ton of time drilling proper tackling technique where it's almost like they're just drilling single and double legs over and over and over again. It's head to the side, control the legs, all those things. So there's less head injury there because they're purposely teaching them how to wrap and tackle. Also, it's very rare. It happens, but it's very rare that in a game that's multiple times, it's full sprint contact, very rarely happens in rugby. Most of the time it's, I've got a little bit of steam up, I get popped by you, maybe you don't get me, Jocko's right there, boom, he takes me down. So very rarely is it, I'm running full speed, you're running full speed, and then we're just going to see what happens. So there's some of that too.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know you had an unfortunate incident with the boys on a hike, and what happened with that? What lessons did you take away?
Yeah, so our school does a fall hike. So we're blessed enough to live in the Shenandoah Valley. So we're right in the middle of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And during the fall, it's got to be one of the prettiest places in the States. Everything is turning colors, the trees, everything looks like a Norman Rockwell painting, basically. A lot of people from the East Coast flood our town for 3 weeks during the fall to go, we call them leaf lookers. They just come to check out the foliage in the mountains. Like, that's how beautiful it is. People from all over the country will come down. So our school takes advantage of it. and they do what we call a fall hike, which is the entire school goes, but they break the hikes up into basically how capable the kids are. So the kindergartners go on a hike, and then the high schoolers go on a hike, and middle school goes on a hike, but the high school hike is a legit hike. I want to say it's something like 9 or 14 miles there and back. So it's a legit hike. And the parents, as many parents as can, are encouraged to come on this. So it's a great event for the school. It's something we all look forward to doing. I was not there for this fall hike. I was meeting with a company, but one of the dads that did go was just like a pillar of our community. Been living there forever, a whole bunch of kids. Nobody had a bad word to say about this guy. He was on, the board for the school, just one of those guys that did everything he possibly could for his kids and for the community. And he was on the hike, and he was kind of bringing up the rear with a couple of people. And I don't know what the initial thing was, if he was dehydrated or if he had, a heart issue, but he went unconscious and fell over. And I think when he fell over, he hit his head. Hit his face for sure, because there was a lot of blood, and there was a couple of girls from the school that were with him that he was hiking with, and they try to respond to him. He kind of comes back to, but it's a horrifying situation for them, even as it is right now with him being responsive, because his face is all cut up, there's blood everywhere, and he was responsive for a little bit, and then he started to go unresponsive. So one of the girls runs up, makes contact. Some of the parents come back down, and they start to try to help him out, but he's like completely unresponsive at this point. So, grace to God, they were in a place where they could actually get cell service, because you don't hardly get any service on this hike. We're talking like backcountry into the Blue Ridge Mountains. So they get some cell service. They call 911. And 911 is now trying to respond, but this is the mountains. They're a very long ways away. So about 20 or 30 minutes go by before the EMS ever make it to the base of the mountain to start the hike. But I think they were 5 miles into the hike. So they've got to get all the equipment, all that stuff up there. And at the same time, one of the parents, his wife was there with him too. One of the parents had called the parish priest, because they were kind of like, he might not come out of this one. So EMS finally gets there. They're trying to get the equipment up the mountain, but I don't know how to say this without being just blunt. They were not in shape, and they could not make it up the mountain with the equipment. So a bunch of the high school boys started running down the mountain, and then grabbing equipment from them, and then running back up the mountain with the equipment, running back down, and just shuttling this stuff back and forth. And a couple of times when they ran down, the EMS were just literally sitting there taking a breather during this situation. So some of those boys put in 21, 25 miles that day, just shuttling stuff back up. And we're not talking like flat. We're talking in the mountains, shuttling stuff back up and forth. Parish priest gets there, total stud, sprints up the mountain in his cassock, gets there, is able to issue last rites, but unfortunately the father passed away. And there was a lot of, it's just a horrible situation all around, but there was a lot of frustration, obviously, because of how everything went down with the EMS, all that different stuff. So tight-knit community. The community definitely felt the loss of this man. It felt, the outpouring of love for his family, but there was some resources brought into the school to try to help people kind of talk through this and deal with this. And I wrote a letter to some of the boys, all the boys that I knew were involved, and just told them that, hey, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but we've all dealt with loss before being in our profession, and let me just give you some things that I think will come in handy for you to think about. And the main thing that I wanted them to take away was it was good that they were there. If they weren't there and they weren't able to shuttle that stuff up back and forth, think about what a horrible situation that is for that family already. His wife, his daughter was on the hike too. Those boys being there was a big relief for them. And then another big thing that I want them to understand was, I think a lot of them were dealing with, is it okay to be frustrated? Is it okay to be upset at some of the EMS? And I was like, hey, is it okay to be frustrated at the situation? Yes, it's okay to be frustrated at the situation, but don't dwell on it. don't take it out on them. You can't control that situation. You know, you did what you did. And I was basically just trying to, as much as I could from a detached perspective, just reshape their thought process, if they needed it, into it was good that you were there. Like, don't be sad that you were there, which I don't know if they were. Don't be sad that you were there. It was a good thing that you were there in a tragic situation to support this family. It would have, horrible day. It would have been that much worse if you guys wouldn't have been there doing what you did for that family. But just when you live in a community like ours, I mean, that leaves a big hole, big hole.
Did you take his place on the school board?
I don't know if I took his place. I think they were already going to invite some more people to the board, and I was asked to be on the board. Another big lesson from that I told those boys was, you know, being prepared is a choice. You're not always going to be an 18-year-old athlete stud. You could be a 50-year-old athlete. You could be a 50-year-old stud, but that's a choice. You know, when you graduate from this school, go to college, maybe you play sport, maybe you don't go to college. Like, no one's going to force you to work out anymore. And those EMS members that couldn't make it up a mountain, they didn't make it up the mountain because they just weren't prepared. Flip that with our priest who's 50. I'm going to get it wrong, and I apologize, Father. I don't want to call you out for being older than you actually are. But he's mid-50s, and he sprinted the entire way up there. So I was like, you guys had a great example of a 55-year-old guy who was completely ready for that situation. And then you had the people that should have been ready for that situation that weren't even capable of making it up. So it's a choice whether you're prepared or not. And it's not going to be any easier than right now. You know, 10 years from now, if you're not working, if you're not working out, if you're not putting in the miles and putting in the hours, you know, you could find yourself being that situation that you're frustrated at. That could be you 10 years from now. That could be you 20 years from now. And you'd have no one to blame but yourself because you weren't prepared.
What's the priest protocol workout?
Well, he's one of my, he gets after it. He's one of my sparring partners for boxing. So he's in phenomenal shape. We went 30 minutes one time without a break because he controls all the sparring.
Like so, 30-minute round?
30-minute round. I was in the hurt locker, but he was just bouncing around all over the place like it was no big deal. In my defense, the volume of punches he was throwing, Father, was a lot less than the volume of punches that I was throwing. But he's super in shape. He runs every day. He bikes a lot. He coaches lacrosse for one of the schools there. I think if he's not helping somebody out in the community, he's spending his energy working out or doing something physical. So he's total stud. Total stud.
Do you guys have a code over at the Forge? What's it called? The Forge?
The Forge, yeah.
You guys have a code?
You know, we don't have a code. We definitely need a code, though, don't we?
You definitely need a code.
Yeah.
I got asked the other day about the Warrior Kid books, and you know, one of the things that I talked about was the fact that in the mid 2000s in the SEAL teams, we had some discipline problems pop up and guys doing dumb things. And look, we've had plenty of guys do dumb things since then, but there was one of the things that came from that was, you know, all these different military units, they all have, and this is going back to, you know, the samurai and the Vikings and the knights, they all had their codes that they lived by. And we, in the SEAL teams, we didn't really have that. We had a bunch of little sayings, but they didn't really guide your behavior in many cases. And so there was an attempt made. They got a bunch of us together to San Clemente Island, and I was one of the people that went. And it was a bunch of people from different ranks, different commands, different coasts. They brought in a pretty widespread variety of people, and we ended up writing down the SEAL ethos. And you know, it was, is it perfect? No, but you know, at a minimum, it at least captures some really important stuff for the SEALs. And, you know, so I kind of watched that. I watched how that happened, and I watched it go out into the community. And, you know, just like the patches and everything else, that it was very top down. And so the way it was received in the beginning was a little bit, and you didn't get it until what, 2008?
2008.
So you probably were still seeing like, oh, the SEAL ethos thing. Yeah. You probably were still hearing that kind of thing. because, you're getting something imposed on you, and we don't like to have things imposed on us. And I think that code, the first time that I felt like, oh, there's some traction coming there, and that's when I went to a memorial service and they read it. And you start listening to those words and you go, okay, I'm starting to understand where this comes from and why we have this. But, when I was writing the Warrior Kid books, you think about it, there used to be various codes that were issued to kids, whether they got those codes from church, whether it was the 10 Commandments, whether they got it from the Pledge of Allegiance, whether they got it from the Boy Scouts. There was a place that they were going to get this code to live by. And you can make a lot of decisions. You can make a lot of decisions if you've got a code. If you've got some protocol in your life that you follow, you can make a lot of decisions, and you can make a lot of good decisions. So that was one of my main goals when I wrote the first Warrior Kid book, is give kids a code that they can live by. And by the way, in the Warrior Kid book, it's encouraged that you write your own code. It's not, hey, here's the code that you should use. In fact, the Warrior Kid code is what the kid writes after he reads the other codes and after his uncle tells him, all right, dude, what's your code? What is the Warrior Kid code? So that might be an idea, little exercise that you guys could do, come up with your own forge code. And again, you'd be surprised how many decisions you can make in life if you've got a good code to live by. The Warrior Kid code. The Warrior Kid wakes up early in the morning. The Warrior Kid studies to learn and gain knowledge and ask questions if they don't understand. The Warrior Kid trains hard, exercises, and eats right to be strong and fast and healthy. The Warrior Kid trains to know how to fight so they can stand up to bullies and protect the weak. The Warrior Kid treats people with respect, doesn't judge them, and helps out others whenever possible. The Warrior Kid keeps things neat and is always prepared and ready for action. The Warrior Kid stays humble, controls their ego, and stays calm. Warrior Kids do not lose their tempers. The Warrior Kid works hard, saves money, is frugal, doesn't waste things, and it always does their best. The Warrior Kid is always thankful for both the challenges and opportunities in life that help them become a smarter, stronger, and healthier Warrior Kid. I am a Warrior Kid. So you get to you can make some serious decisions based on those protocols right there. It's going to help you a lot. So that's the kind of thing, when I think of, when you were telling me about that, I think, oh, you get these kids to come up with a little code, little 7 rules, or the 5 rules of the Forged, or you take Forged and you say, F is for fighting. We know how to fight, you know. Yeah. O is for opportunity. We seize our, you come up with some cool stuff.
There's a interesting little snapshot of what drives boys is we do it first Friday every month. People have lots of different activities going on. Not everybody can make every Friday, so your attendance goes all over the place. Whenever we have an event that's got an edge of violence to it, maximum turnout. Mm-hmm. Boxing was the one where we had the most kids that we've ever had. Mm-hmm. Most kids. I don't know if it was the dads driving that train, like, hey, boys, we're going, or if it was the boys that were like, let's get after it. It was the one where we had the most people show up. The second biggest one we did was middle of winter, had a bunch of different ice buckets outside, and it was, we're all going to spend X amount of time in the ice bucket, dad and his son at the same time. Or for me, I had 3 sons, so it was dad and 3 sons at the same time. Anything where they feel like they were challenged, or there's a little hint of violence there, like they're maximum participation. Some of the ones where it's, stewardship. We're going to learn to do caretaking of livestock. Yeah. People still
little
come.
Johnny can't make it.
Yeah. Oh, we got a little family event, but you tell them we're going to lace it up and the kids are going to fight. And even if you've never had any experience, everyone's doing 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Everyone was there.
Yeah, that shows you that there's a little intrinsic thing that many young men have. Yeah. And we were talking about this on one of his recent podcasts, just like when it comes to recruiting and the trouble that they've had in the military recruiting people. And it's, when I was a little kid, I wanted to carry a machine gun. Oh, yeah. So if you showed me the recruiting thing that said you get to carry a machine gun, sign up over here, cool. Just give me the piece of paper. I'm signing it. And then some of the recruiting efforts recently have been like not aimed at a young kid that wants to carry a machine gun. They're aimed at, so when you're a young kid and you want to carry a machine gun and you see some commercial or some advertisement that has nothing to do with carrying a machine gun and being a warrior, you're like, well, I guess that's not my place.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, the 80s ads and the early 90s ads, the Marines, you've never had better. You've never had better military recruiting advertisements than that. I mean, you felt like watching that video as a kid, that if you signed up, you were going to be a one-man army. Yeah. Is what it made you feel like.
Yeah. So that's why your community, you're the Forge, you tell them they're going to get it on. It's like, oh yeah, we'll be there.
We'll be there.
And that's awesome. And you know, it's interesting because you mentioned you start off talking about the idea of service and choosing to serve. You know, obviously you and I served in the military, and when you look at these kids now and you look at, your military experience, which was similar to my military experience because we both basically fought in the big giant 20-year global war on terrorism. 8 years ago, you lost J.J. Finan. These wars cost over $2 trillion. Almost 7,000 killed in action. Over 50,000 wounded in action. And those numbers, we just throw them out there: 7,000 killed, 50,000 wounded. But those for us that were in the military, those aren't just numbers; these are people. And there's so many of those people, so many of those individual humans. And when you think about, the next generation and the service and what we went through, and I know that this gets asked. I know it certainly gets asked to me sometimes, when I'm out in public. I know that people on the team, on the Echelon Front team that were in the military, get asked this question. But, it's the question of was it worth it? And how do you feel? How do you address that with your kids? Your kids might be a little young right now. How are you thinking you're going to address those things with your kids when they get old enough?
Yeah.
How's your oldest right now?
How old is 13? Yeah, 13, 12, 10. That's the boys, and then the two girls a little bit younger. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've had a lot of people ask me the same thing recently too, and I don't know if it was, some of the discussions with this election cycle with some of the personalities. They're really looking at that question. Was it worthwhile? And I don't know that I have the answer total, but I know I'm really proud of what we did over there and the effort that we put forward and the impact that it made, at least on the people's lives that we were involved in. Take Mosul for an example. I know we can talk about whatever on this podcast. I can't begin to tell you, because I don't want to talk about it, what I saw and what our guys saw ISIS doing to civilians inside of Iraq and inside of Syria. It's things that we don't even want to believe that human beings are capable of doing to each other. So knowing that we played a small part, our troop did, in ridding the world of that organization, I could not be more proud of that. But then you look at the total cost of everything, and I can only focus on the things that I can focus on, the things that I know that we affected, and I know that for those people, I think we left them in a better place. Mm-hmm. And for my kids ask me that question, that's kind of what I would tell them: is you don't sign up to serve thinking that you're going to control every decision that's going to happen to you inside of the military. It's a large organization, and you've got to trust that people are making the right decisions. All you can do is control your actions on the ground and make sure that you're doing the right things for the right reasons, and that you're protecting the people to your right and to your left and making a difference. And I think based on what I saw all of my tours, even in Afghanistan, where hindsight now, like, it's in a pretty bad spot for everybody that was there. But for a period of time, we gave them some things that they didn't have. I don't know if that makes it worthwhile, but I know I'm proud of what our guys accomplished that while they were over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly that's the same kind of attitude I have of, being, especially in Ramadi in 2006, like the civilian populace was being subjected to just abject, subhuman, terroristic behavior from the insurgents. And the fact that we were able to be there and able to rid that city of insurgents and give the people in that city the opportunity to live normal lives. And again, it ended up, we would have to do a full assessment. It's a lot easier to do a full assessment of where Afghanistan's at right now, because Afghanistan clearly has gone back to the dark ages of the Taliban, and it's just horrible to see. Iraq, and I just saw a news story. I haven't fact checked it yet, but they're passing a law that brings the age of consent and marriage in Iraq down to 9 years old. So that's not a positive sign for the girls there. But I know that they at one point were living in a terrible situation, and we were able to help them. And then on top of that, of course, we were thankfully able to overwatch the soldiers and Marines on the streets and keep hundreds of those soldiers and Marines alive. So same thing. Like, I know that what we did in our little share of the task, we did what we could. I think about what do we learn as a nation? When I look at the mistakes that we made in Vietnam specifically, just because I think I'm more familiar with that war, and clearly it was very devastating for the country. And I wonder what lessons, how there's such obvious lessons that we should have taken away from Vietnam and we didn't, and how short is our memory going to be this time? When we are with the world kind of worldwide is horrible right now. Like, you think about what's going on in Ukraine, in Israel, like, these are terrible situations. There's escalation. I mean, the escalation in those two areas of operations is, both of those could go completely out of control very quickly. And how well, what are we doing about it? How are we gonna handle these situations? What lessons are we gonna forget about? At what point do we become the catalyst for escalation instead of the catalyst for de-escalation? And I really hope that, for instance, we got a new administration coming in. Obviously, Tulsi, who is, I know her personally, and I have a lot of trust and confidence in her. She's just a great person with a great attitude. And then I know some of the other people involved in the administration as well. We've spent a lot of time. We spent a lot of time with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What a smart and knowledgeable guy he is. And Vivek, I've met him and spent time with him. And again, these are people that I hope that they recognize lessons that we should have learned from Vietnam, lessons that we hopefully have learned from Iraq and Afghanistan, and we can move forward in a way that makes this sacrifices from all these wars worthwhile as we move to a place of peace and not a place of war. There's a guy we know. I was thinking about this before, knowing that you were coming on, and we had talked about this a little bit. And one of the things that I think about when I think about wars, I think of a guy named Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. He is, definitely one of the heroes of the Civil War, and also a guy that I try and read as much as I can now. Just a very eloquent speaker who I think the way he spoke and the way he wrote about things was very powerful, and he captured things that I think he captures in a way, even though it was a Civil War and post-Civil War. But, what he gave a speech, and I think it ties into everything that we're talking about. When you think about what we did, as a nation, and then what we did as teammates and service members, he said this: "We rose in soul above the things which even the Declaration of Independence pronounces the inalienable rights of human nature, for the securing of which governments are instituted among men, happiness, liberty, life, we laid on the altar of offering or committed to the furies of destruction. So he's saying there, like, we looked at the things that we're guaranteed, or the things that the Declaration of Independence says these are your rights as a human being, and we said, nope, we don't care about them. We're going to put our sacrifice. We're going to sacrifice happiness, sacrifice liberty, and possibly sacrifice our lives for this. While our minds were lifted up to a great thought and our hearts swelled to its measure. So we're performing above our station as mere human beings. We were beckoned by the vision of destiny. We saw our country moving forward, charged with the sacred trusts of man. We believed in its glorious career, the power of high aims and strong purpose. And I think it's important there. We believed in the glorious career of our country. We weren't, we believed that we were doing the right things. And, sometimes I'll get asked that question of, what would you do if you were ordered to do something that wasn't the right thing to do? I wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't do it. If we were told to do something that didn't make sense, I wouldn't do it. If we were told to do something that was immoral, wouldn't do it. And that's the way most of the people in the military are. The vast majority, and by most, I mean 99%. But when you're there, you believe in what you're doing. If we didn't believe in it, we're not doing it. The power of high aims and strong purpose, the continuity of great endeavor, the onward, upward path of history to God. Every man felt that he gave himself to and belonged to something beyond time and above place, something which could not die. These are the reasons. Not fixed in the form of things, but formative of things. Reasons of the soul. Why we fought for the Union. So when I hear that, he's talking about the Civil War, but so much of that to me applies to my thoughts looking back at the wars. We did our duty. Right? We did our duty. Like what you teach those young men, which is to put others above yourself, that's what we did. And we saw our friends, we saw our brothers, and we saw our teammates do that. And we helped the people on the ground, as we talked about. And hopefully we learned lessons that can then be applied to our country. And I think this line about not fixed in the form of things, right? Not fixed in the form of things, meaning there's not an undeniable reason why we fought. It's not an undeniable, you can't say, well, we fought because of this thing right here. So it's not fixed in the form of things, but he says, but formative of things. So it's like, what did we learn from it? We did it. How did it make us better? How do we become better from what we went through? And I think that's just the way things work. When you think of the idea that what we do is formative of who we are. As individuals, what we do is formative of who we are. And our country, what our country does is formative of who our country is. And there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be things that happen. But as long as they form you into a better person and a better nation, then I think we have to move forward with that attitude. The lessons that we learned from it. And then there's another thing from Chamberlain. He says, there is a way of losing that is finding when soul overmasters sense, when the noble and divine self overcomes the lower self, when duty and honor and love, immortal things, bid the mortal perish. So there's things that are more important than life. It's only when man supremely gives that he supremely finds. That was your sacrifice. That is your reward. So, although, we, and those of us in the military, those of us that stepped up and served, when you serve, when you give, that's when you find. So it's what you talked about earlier. When you step up and you give, that your reward, you make the sacrifice, your reward is what you find. And so, as I look back at, again, the idea of the wars that we fought, I want to make sure that we remember what it taught us, and we utilize that as individuals and as communities and as a nation. We use what we've been through to make us better. To where I'm at on it, at this particular stage. Always trying to keep an open mind, learn more, but Chamberlain was he was a smart guy.
Yeah.
And he was a hell of a writer, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Raising kids, selling steak, teaching leadership, pretty good spot to be in.
Not a bad place to be. Not a bad place to be.
Yeah, being able to take all these lessons and impart them on as many people as you can. You're not just your own kids, but the kids in the community and then companies that we get to work with. That right there is a huge benefit. The fact that we get to take these lessons that we learned and pass them on, it's so important. And I believe that's part of this whole thing that Chamberlain was talking about.
You said it at the beginning, the blessing of this Echelon Front for me is I go and I get to pass some of these lessons learned on to people who are really thirsty for them. But every time I do it, I come home a better husband. I come home a better father. I still make plenty of mistakes, but I can't be up there talking to these different individuals about this and not just thinking to myself, I messed that up.
Yep.
I messed that up last week. And now I've got to go and, take some ownership of that. So you said the service thing, it's great to be able to be there and help these different companies and help these different individuals. But man, selfishly, it's hugely beneficial for me too.
Gosh, so many people have said to me, man, I wish I had that book when I was younger. I'm always like, me too. Dude, me too. All these books, I wish I had them when I was younger.
Yeah.
And here's another tangentially. You ever had somebody ask you what advice would you give yourself if you were 20 years old?
Yeah.
Have you ever had somebody ask you that question? I had somebody ask me that question. And you know what I said? I said, it doesn't matter because I wouldn't have listened. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
unfortunately, there's some lessons that only life can teach you. And I really hope, and I know because I talk to these people all the time. You talk to these people all the time. We have figured out a way to convey these lessons in a manner that people can actually understand. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been successful is because we've figured out a way. And look, you got to convey to an adult, it's going to be in a certain manner. Going to convey it to kids, it's going to be in a warrior kid manner. That's one of the reasons in the book. It's not the dad. Why isn't it the dad? There's a couple reasons why it's not the dad. One of the reasons it's not the dad because not everyone has a dad, right? And I didn't want that kid to go, well, geez, I don't have a dad. And the other reason is kids don't listen to their dads. There's always my kid, by the time he was 8 years old, he was way smarter than I was, knew way more than I did, of course. But they always listen to Uncle Jake.
You want me to give you a real world example of that?
Let's go.
Do you think I talk with all of my kids, but specifically the boys, and it's not a gender thing, it's my boys are older, with my boys about the importance of working out? Yes. Do you think I talk to them about the importance of eating well and taking care of their responsibilities around the farm all the time? The boys reread the Warrior Kid book. I come downstairs at my normal time, somewhere between 5:30. No one's downstairs. It's my time. around 6, usually the 2 or 3 kids are down. Nobody's there. I look outside, the lights in our pole barn are on, which is where the gym is. I go out there, my boys are shirtless, doing pull-ups and doing push-ups.
Oh, hell yeah.
I've told them this repeatedly, that they should be doing this. Uncle Jake steps in and tells it, and all of a sudden, you know, I don't know if their mom would approve of this, but like Megadeth was blaring in the pole barn, and they're just crushing the deck of cards workout.
Yeah.
It's like, check.
It works. And that's the same thing that happens, you know, I get this feedback from companies we go work with, you know, the COO or the CEO will be like, this is the same stuff I tell them. They just don't want to hear it from me anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens. That external detached element comes in and tells you what's going on that you don't have a little relationship with. We were terrible about this in the SEAL teams because we would always, no one in the SEAL teams could be good enough to teach shooting in the SEAL teams. Because I could never say, you know, Sean, can you show me that draw again? Help me out. Nope. My ego will not allow me. You have to be some civilian expert. And then you can tell me. And same thing with parachuting and same thing with fighting. It's like, no, there's not enough guys in the SEAL teams that are black belts in jiu-jitsu, that did Muay Thai, that were professional boxers or golden glove boxers. No, none of those. Can't learn from any of them. We got to hire somebody to come and show us some karate. Right? It's like no, totally ridiculous. So we try and do that. That's why Uncle Jake is a pretty powerful figure with the kids. But passing these lessons on, that's to me one of the best things that we can do as military members, and to serve our country and serve our communities to the best of our ability now that we're retired old guys. Facts. And that's the way it goes. We good? Is that us up to speed for right now?
I think so. I think literally everything that we got going on, we just talked about. At least all the good stuff.
That's what I like
Some
to
of
hear.
the bad stuff.
Right on. Echo, any questions?
No, I don't actually.
All right.
Oddly, because shoot, I know Sean Glass. If we got questions, I call him up.
Yeah,
What up? Where we
Hit
at?
him up.
So,
where are my steaks?
or whatever. Or whatever.
Hey, so we're training jiu-jitsu. Are the kids training jiu-jitsu?
So I was talking with Echo about this. We're trying to control the schedule. So they have spring sports, fall sport. Fall sport for them, they all play soccer. It's awesome right now because all the boys are on the same soccer team for school. And then my daughter plays for the rec league. Youngest daughter's too young. Spring is rugby season, and then my daughter's playing soccer again. So wintertime, summertime is the only time that we can fit in combatives. I try to walk a line of not forcing them to do it, and it's tough because we know why we want them to do it. I don't want them to do it for any reason that's not great for them. It builds a huge amount of confidence. It's good for you to know how to defend yourself and to defend other people. I can't convey that. It's tough for an 11-year-old to listen to that and have the perspective to go, my dad's trying to give me a gift. I didn't have that when I was growing up. We didn't, a little itty-bitty town. There was one Shotokan karate place that I went to for 3 months, and then it closed down because it wasn't enough Shotokan going on in Corsicana. So I never had that, so I want to give my kids that gift. A couple of them are down and we're trained, and then a couple of them want some downtime. So any advice?
I'm going to give it to you right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you Echelon Front advice. So at Echelon Front, we talk about the difference between formal training and informal training. So what most people think of, Echo Charles, when they think of training, they think of, all right, we're going to do training for our company. We need to take 4 days off. We need to bring in an expert. We need to sit in a classroom all day. We need to take notes. We need to be presented with a manual or a pamphlet or something. That's what training is. We think of military training. Okay, you're going to go to this school. You're going to go through this leadership stuff, or you're going to go through this weapon system, and you're going to learn this weapon system, and it's going to take 3 weeks to learn this weapon system. And once you've got this weapon system learned, then you'll be ready to use this system. That's formal training. Informal training is, hey, Echo, have you ever shot this weapon system before? Hey, let me give you a quick rundown. Oh, okay. Well, hey, you going to be here tomorrow? Because we're actually using it on the range. Oh, okay, cool. I'll let you shoot it a couple times. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, hey, I got to break down and clean that weapon system. Do you want to help me? And boom, you get to do it. And over a period of 6 months, you're actually better trained than the guy that we sent to the 2-week school on the weapon system. So what I would recommend, and this is actually a perfect solution for you and your family because you have the pole barn, you've got room, you can get a couple mats.
We've got them.
You got mats already. So what you can do is informal training. What you can do is, hey, for warm up today, we're going to escape the mount. You know enough basic jiu-jitsu, escape the mount, arm lock. You know enough basic jiu-jitsu to say, hey, to warm up, hey, maybe we're not even doing jiu-jitsu. Maybe we're just saying, hey, we're going to do hip escapes. We're going to do movements. And occasionally, we're going to, let me just show you guys an arm lock. You show a kid an arm lock for 10 minutes. You show a kid an arm lock for 10 minutes as a way to warm up, and you do that for a month, that kid's going to have a freaking pretty solid arm lock. You show him how to do the rear naked choke for 5 minutes, that kid's going to have a pretty solid rear naked choke. For 5 minutes a day. So I would recommend, and also then you do little challenges. Like, hey, your kids, do they ever shoot the basketball?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or do they toss the football?
Oh yeah. Rugby.
So they toss the rugby. So they're they're going to be outside. They're going to be doing things. Hey, this is what you're going to do today. You get the mount position. You got to escape. You got to escape, and you got to grab this, tennis ball over here. That's on the other side of the mat, and you just do some little games. And if you do this informal training, by the time these kids recognize, because what will happen is at some juncture, someone's going to push them on the schoolyard, and they're going to do a double leg. Because that's another thing you'll drill a little bit of. They're going to do a double leg, and they're going to take them down to the ground. Well, they're just going to do a rugby tackle.
Yeah.
Because they already know how to do. So they're just going to grab their legs like they do in rugby, and then they're going to be on the ground, and the kid's going to turn away, and they're going to put a rear naked choke and be like, oh, I'm never going to get picked on. This stuff that my dad was trying to show me, this magic, it's magic. And I'm going to learn more of this magic. So informal training, and this goes for all parents. A lot of times kids are like, what age should my kid start jiu-jitsu? 0. When your kid is laying in their crib and they can't walk, you can start to pass their guard a little bit. You know what I'm saying, Echo Charles? And it becomes a little game. Yeah. When your kid can't walk, but they can ride, and you can have them mount you, and you can let them get that movement and the stability. Little informal training. That's my recommendation.
Dig it.
So when you're doing jiu-jitsu, when they're working out, boxing, rugby, the whole 9 yards, they're going to need fuel. I recommend Jocko Fuel for all of us. Check out jockofuel.com. We got protein. We got energy drinks. We got ready-to-drink energy drinks. It's wintertime. And you know what that means? Hot chocolate milk. This is a miracle. It's a miracle.
Sure.
Have you ever had hot chocolate milk?
No, I have never heated it up.
Okay, so heat up the milk first. Okay. Heat up the milk first, and then add it. And then, actually, this is another thing. You ever doubted a piece of technology? Doubted a piece of technology, and you're just like, that is stupid. It happened to me with wireless earphones for your phone. Like, for so long, I was like, I got to carry you got to charge this thing. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I just have a wire. It's no big deal. And then finally, I forget who. I think JP was like, dude, they're freaking awesome. And I was like, really? And I got him. I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. My wife has this little thing. It's like a little stirring machine, I guess.
Stirring machine. Sure.
It's a long, slender metal pole with a little spring thing. Like
yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. We got one of
Bro,
those.
you would not think that could whip up in a mug. It whips up chocolate milk. Yes. So heat up the milk. Put a scoop of chocolate milk in, and you can try the other flavors, but I'm telling you, the chocolate milk, put the chocolate milk, put that little wire thing in it, and then if you're going the distance, my wife makes heavy whipping cream, or she makes whipped cream with monk fruit, so it's sugar-free whipped cream, and it's that right there is the combo. You can't beat it. This is glorious. This is one of the most epic things ever. Yep. You think I'm kidding, man?
I know I've done that exact thing. Not the
heavy, not the whipping cream.
No, but the whole deal. Same tool, everything.
Oh, next level.
I got you, fam. I got you. Yeah.
It's good, right?
Yeah, it's good. Very good. So, miracle. That's fun. That's a fun way to say it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Something that tastes delicious and gives you protein.
Hey, look, we're doing great work with our milk over here. Christmas time, heated up all day.
JockoFuel.com. Come and get it. Get yourself some chocolate milk. Get yourself protein. Get yourself energy drink. Get yourself Joint Warfare, Super Krill. I met a woman at the 434.
Sure.
She was like, I couldn't run, and now I'm doing burpees. Yeah. Joint Warfare, Super Krill. All day. She was probably 52. And quite honestly, I'm rounding that down because I'm trying to be polite because I don't know how she was. You know what I'm saying?
You never know. I know.
But here she was. She said she couldn't run, and now she's not only running, she's doing burpees. Yeah. So check these things out. JockoFuel.com. Also, they're at Wawa. They're at Walmart. Have you heard of Walmart before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good things.
You can get the protein at Walmart. So go get the protein. You can also get it at Wawa, Vitamin Shop, GNC, Military Commissaries, AFES, Hannaford, Dash Stores in Maryland, Wakefern, ShopRite, HEB down in Texas.
Oh, HEB.
Oh, yeah.
That was our grocery store growing up.
HEB Texas loves Jocko Fuel.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome. We go into HEB down there, and they set up like the most awesome displays. And they're just fired up. So HEB is a great store. And then same thing with Meijer up in the Midwest.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very hyped. And then Wegmans.
Yeah.
Out on the East Coast.
Right by us.
Oh, you got a Wegmans?
Right, 30 miles away. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I was actually there getting some stuff for this trip before we rolled out.
Okay. Well, there you go. Wegmans. We're at Wegmans. Harris Teeter. And then, Lifetime Fitness and Shields. And then a bunch of small gyms everywhere. So go get yourself some Jocko Fuel. Also, when you're doing things in America, you should be doing them while you're wearing American-made clothing, i.e. originusa.com. There's literally no reason. I'm not going to go through the slavery thing.
No.
Look, okay. we fought the Civil War. I talked about Chamberlain.
Yeah.
We thought we ended slavery, and we did here in America.
Yeah.
It's not over in the world. Yeah. There's more slavery now than there was then. You've heard this stat?
Yeah.
You know where they are? Making your jeans in China.
Yeah.
That's where they are. Literal slaves. So don't support that. Support America. Support the American economy. Support the American farmer, which Sean talked about. Is it an easy life being a farmer?
Not at all.
Okay. It's not an easy life. How about we give them some support? How about we use American cotton?
Yep. Well,
yeah. So whatever you need to wear. Workout clothes, we got you. Jiu-jitsu gis, we got you. Jeans, we got you. Work pants, we got you. What do they call? What would you call like the Versa-type pants?
The Versa-type.
Yeah, just what do you call those? Adventure pants, something
like
this?
Yeah, some outdoors.
Lifestyle pants. There's probably a word for it that I don't really know. But hey, whatever you need to wear, originusa.com, you can get it.
When I was down in North Carolina last year, you hooked me up with a little tour of the Origin Factory.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing.
It's amazing.
It is amazing to see all the stuff that's going on in that factory, all the American goods. And I got to talk to a bunch of people there that were very happy to be working there and doing awesome stuff. Yep. I mean, it was like mind-blowing to be down there and see everything go down.
And I'm so proud and happy that you could go down there and see that, because it is such an investment in America to be doing that. Because the easiest thing to do, look, bro, I can talk to someone in China right now. Look, didn't used to be like that in the 70s and 80s when they took everything overseas. You used to have to like send them a text, not a text message, but a wire or something, right? You had to go over there. No, you don't need to do that now. You can call it, go on the internet, Google, make t-shirt, and boom, you can get it done. Yeah. And you can just get everything made overseas. And you can save a little bit of money so you can make a little more money. Just use slave labor. Just set your conscience aside. Just set it aside. Say that you're doing it because, you're helping them. You're not helping them. You're keeping them enslaved. No, that's not the right way to do things. So when you go down to that factory, that's the rebirth of American manufacturing. We're going to bring it back. It's not easy. We're reinvesting everything right back into the factories, right back into the people, right back into the materials. That's what we're doing. So go to originusa.com and get yourself some freaking freedom and put it on your body. That's what I got.
It's true. Also, if you want to represent discipline equals freedom, go to jockostore.com. Get some hats on there, some shirts, of course, some hoodies on there. Also, what we call the shirt locker. We've arrived at that name, the shirt locker. It's a subscription scenario. Anyway, discipline equals freedom represented in different creative ways.
You got this whole new shtick about the shirt locker name.
What do you mean?
I don't know. This thing that you just did about we've arrived at this name.
Yeah, we did arrive at this name a while ago.
Like 6 months ago. Why are we talking about it now?
We still arrived at it. We still arrived at it.
Whenever you arrived at it, I got to get on it, because every time we go to the muster, there's a bunch of people walking around rocking some great shirts.
Yeah.
I'm like, where did you get that? Shirt Locker. Yeah. The only place, because I go on the website, I'm like, cool, I got to get on one of these, and then I don't see all the cool drops because I'm not on the Shirt Locker.
You said drops, bro.
Yeah.
That's a boomer over there talking about drop culture.
Well, technically it's not a drop. It's similar, but it's not. Okay. It's a subscription there. But here's the good news.
Okay.
If, let's say one was in your position and missed out on all the past shirts, when you sign up, you can get some of the past designs.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Given that they're not sold out at any given moment. Anyway. It's a perk of joining the Shirt Locker. But yeah, good designs. The most recent one is You Against You.
Is that out yet?
I heard that somewhere. It's a good deal. December okay. Shirt is You Against You. So yeah, it's
do you don't do a Christmas theme for December?
Sometimes, but I feel like if you buy a Christmas shirt, you're going to be compelled to only wear it during Christmas. Which is cool. It's cool. But what's the word? Evergreen or whatever that you can wear it whenever.
Look at you, bro, with the big strategy.
I'm over here learning.
That's amazing.
Anyway, it's all on jockostore.com.
Yep. And by the way, in this whole system, like every day, this whole system, this whole atmosphere that we're in here, this whole ecology that we're living in, you're gonna need steak.
It's true.
Facts.
And I recommend you go check out primalbeef.com. You heard about it today. You talked to the man, right? Who's making it happen. And it's beautiful.
Quick question about
dude, I was like getting emotional. And you just cut me off. I was talking about the beauty.
Well, yeah, this is going to be a beautiful question. How about that?
Okay, hell yeah.
So if I just wanted just ground beef, like every month, like a subscription scenario, I can do that.
Done. We literally call it, I'm not very creative, so I called it the just ground beef box.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Hey, Jocko store, just ground. Okay, that's a good theme.
I'm not like carnivore strictly, but we've always got cooked ground beef.
We're brushing up against it.
Yeah, we're carnivore adjacent. We're right there. Yeah. So my protocol is I've got about 4 pounds of primal beef, ground beef cooked at almost any time. Salt, pepper, that's all I put in there. One, because the beef is ridiculous, but two, I also want it to be versatile. Most of the time, my kids just eat that with some fruit, or they'll put it on some rice or something. Yeah, but it's also there if we want to make tacos at night. We can add a little bit of little extra seasoning.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. So you got just ground beef, you just cook it as is.
Salt and pepper.
Salt. Okay. Well, there you go.
That's it. Because that goes with everything. Whether I'm making tacos, whether we're making lasagna, we don't make lasagna, pasta, whatever we're making, whatever. You just throw the ground beef in there. But it doesn't usually last because it's so good. My kids are just put it on rice, put it on a bowl with nothing else, and it's usually gone within a day.
This sounds like you might have a plan.
Yeah, that is my plan. That's literally what I do. So I'll cook it. I put this rib rub on it, just a little bit, and it's like, even if you want to make tacos, you got the rib rub already baked or cooked into it.
Yeah,
the taco makes it, a little thing. But yeah, you put on rice, spaghetti, something like that.
Yeah,
put on whatever. But yeah, have it all like there's a bunch of it. Is what I'm saying.
It's the best, and it cooks. You cook ground beef. It only takes a couple of minutes, and then you've got all that stuff just on standby. Only in my house, it doesn't last.
Yeah, so it's
usually
like
standby is not that long.
Yeah. So that's why, you got this, because we're always going back to the store to grab more.
So we've got
there you go,
15 pounds in the just ground beef box, and then we have a new smaller box for people who maybe don't need 15 pounds every 30 days. There's 7 pounds in there as well. But almost any box you buy from us, you're going to get the ground beef in there as well. So have it on standby.
Making some good
fruit finish.
What percentage? You know how they break it down?
Yeah.
What are we dealing with?
85-15. And
I think
that's
good.
The sweet spot.
That might be the sweet spot right there.
I think it is.
Because that makes a burger.
Yeah.
That makes a good burger.
I've had 3 people text me within the last 24 hours and say they can't have a steak anywhere else because they've been ruined, and they can't have a burger anywhere else because they've been ruined.
Yeah.
I mean, the steaks are ridiculous, but our family eats a lot of burgers, and we won't eat anything. It's just, it just sets the bar, and then everything else is now kind of a disappointment.
Yeah. So check it out, primalbeef.com. Get some of that. Also, coloradocraftbeef.com. Another great family business out there in Colorado, making great steaks as well. So you can check them out.
Yeah.
Great
Got
people.
to hang out with Jeff at the council.
Did Did you guys go through trade secrets?
Yeah, we just kind of had our own little offsite, our beef offsite.
I know. I saw you two like magnetically go towards each other and start talking. I was like, oh, dude, these guys had a lot of things to discuss. But it's awesome to see. Two great companies, great people. ColoradoCraftBeef.com and PrimalBeef.com. Check it out. Subscribe to the podcast. Check out JockoUnderground.com. Check out the YouTube channels. Check out Psychological Warfare. Check out FlipsideCanvas.com. Dakota Meyer making cool stuff to hang on your wall. I've written a bunch of books about leadership, and you can check those if you want. I've also written a novel. I've also written a bunch of kids' books. So there's a movie coming that's going to help a lot of kids. And they're all going to be working out. They're all going to be eating clean. They're all going to be getting stronger, faster, smarter, and better. But you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for that. You can just get the books. So check those out. Also, Echelon Front, you heard us talk about a little bit today. That's what we do. We take these leadership principles and we teach them to your whole organization. And you will see a dramatic change in your organization because people will start working together as a team. People will understand what the mission is. People know what priorities to focus on. People will have decentralized command where everyone's going to step up and lead. That's what we're going to do for your organization. So if you need help inside your organization, you want Sean to come out, meet with you, go through training protocols, run through exercises with you that will help you see your leadership shortfalls, or one of our other instructors, go to echelonfront.com. We solve problems through leadership. We also have an online training academy, extremeownership.com. Leadership is a skill, believe it or not. Believe it or not, you're not just born with 10 out of 10 leadership skill sets. Doesn't work. Hey, you might have a natural 7 in one of them. That's cool. But you might have a 4 somewhere else, right? So these are skills. You might have a pretty naturally good arm lock. You ever met someone that's got a pretty naturally good arm lock?
Yes.
Yeah, they exist. Like someone's got a good arm lock.
Yeah.
But there's also people that have to learn the arm lock, and they're not that good at it, but they can get good at it over time. Yeah. Same thing with leadership. It's the same thing with leadership. It's a skill that you can learn. So go to extremeownership.com, learn the skill of leadership. If you want to help service members, active and retired, you want to help their families, you want to help Gold Star families, check out Mark Lee's mom. Mama Lee, she's got a great charity organization. If you want to donate or you want to get involved, go to americasmightywarriors.org. There's also heroesandhorses.org. Micah Fink taking people out in the wilderness so they can find themselves. And then Jimmy May's got an organization called beyondthebrotherhood.org. Check those out. And also, Primal Beef gets engaged. Talk about it. What are we doing?
With C4?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew when we started this business that we didn't want it to be something that was just serving us. So we care a lot about the community we came from. So when we started the business, I reached out to Mr. Charlie Keating, who's the father of Charlie Keating IV, who, awesome SEAL, was nicknamed C4, best nickname of all time.
It's in the running.
It definitely is.
It's in the running. There's about 5 nicknames. I'm gonna compile a list. C4 is in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have a much cooler nickname when you're nicknamed C4.
Yeah.
That's freaking legit. I think I'm gonna put together a list of the top 10 nicknames. And
just SEAL wise or like military, because pilots have some good ones. They're not. They're usually negative good.
Yeah, pilots have some okay ones.
Yeah. You don't want to give Dave too much credit.
Yeah, Dave. Do you know what Dave's nickname was?
It's Chip.
Chip.
Yeah.
Dave's nickname was Chip, and it is derogatory because he like chipped his tooth on some system of the thing.
Yeah.
But C4 is definitely probably top 5.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have to really consider and think through those things. Actually, we should have an offsite, or at least a phone call with all the boys and figure out some of them real good nicknames.
Compile
because there's some good ones. But C4. Yeah. Charlie Keating.
So Charlie was
Chuck Heavy. Let's go.
Guy loved by everybody in the SEAL team. Just total stud. Like the operator that you want to be when you get into the SEAL teams. And he was killed on his last tour over in Iraq. My troop actually bumped his troop out. That was my last combat tour as well. And his dad started a foundation in his honor called the C4 Foundation. And the purpose of this foundation is to provide services to SEALs and their families that they just can't get anywhere else. And the primary thing that they do is they operate this amazing ranch. I mean, you've been up there multiple times up in the mountains in California, not too far from here, and they have all these different resources for team guys and for their families to get up there, to take care of themselves, to take care of their body, to take care of their mind, to connect back with their families. And I reached out to my first platoon chief, Dave, is now helping them out. He's been doing that for a couple of years. He's actually at the ranch right now. And I just told him what we had going on, and I said, hey, we'd like to partner with C4, and every time we sell a box of beef, we'd like to donate a cut to SEALs and their family through you guys. And Mr. Keating, just being the outstanding human that he was, I had like the sales pitch already, like ready to show him why this was a good thing. And I got through like 4 words, and he's like, of course, let's do this. So anytime you buy a box, you're feeding yourself super high quality beef, you're feeding your family, but you're also taking care of our nation's special operations forces. So to this date, we've donated about 5,000 pounds of beef to the C4 Foundation, and we've only been in business for a little over a year. And that's all made possible by our patrons. So C4 Foundation doing great stuff.
And you deliver that.
We do.
Yeah. So you bring it down to Va Beach or SD. And
selfishly, I still want to be, a little bit a part of the community and be a blessing to the boys. So we send a bunch out to the West Coast, and then I drive down to the guys on the East Coast, just load the truck up with massive quality. Like my suspension in my Power Wagon was dragging this last drop off.
Is it just like a free for all, like a UN freaking food?
It basically is.
Where guys are just fighting over ribeyes
on standby, just waiting to receive beef. But it's again that counterintuitive thing of you get to give and you get to get some in return. So
yeah, that's awesome. And look, when you're in the Navy, you're not making a ton of money, and so Dude, my family did not eat steak when I was in the teams. Like, that wasn't on the freaking budget. It was just not on the budget at all. I didn't eat steak when I had kids and was in the teams. So to be able to get these guys some freaking steak, hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you want to connect with us on the interwebs, primalbeef.com. Twitter. How much Twitter activity are you doing right now?
About zero. But I need to get back on.
Yeah.
I need to get back on.
Primal_beef_co. And then you're on Instagram now.
Kinda. Like I had this portion where I was like excited about it a little bit, and then I just haven't done too much recently. Okay, it was all just stuff about stuff on the farm, things like that.
It's pretty interesting stuff though. At Sean Glass Actual.
Yeah.
But you're not on Twitter X.
No. I've only got 5 kids.
Yeah.
I've only got so much time to go around, so I got to prioritize and execute.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. But if you want to find Sean Glass Actual, you can find him at Sean Glass Actual. But check out Primal Beef, what's the Instagram Primal_beef_co?
Yeah.
Is that right?
But if you just search Primal Beef Co., like it's going to be the thing that pops up.
Got it. And then for Echo, Charles, and I, you can check out Jocko.com. You can find all this stuff at Jocko.com. And then on social media, I'm at Jocko Willink. Echo's at Echo Charles. And just be careful because there's an algorithm on there that will literally just steal your soul from you. And you'll be thinking it's all good, but it's not. Echo Charles, anything else?
No. Good to see Sean Glass again, as always.
Always a pleasure, Echo. Yeah. Always a pleasure.
But it is like if I want to talk to you, I do just text you, call you, whatever. So yeah, good to see you in person. How about that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Sean, any closing comments?
No, just thanks for having me back on, and love being part of the team.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for coming back on, of course, and thanks for sharing your lessons learned, and thanks for your service to the nation, to the teams, and now to your community. And by the way, thanks to all the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines that are out there right now in harm's way, keeping us safe and protecting our way of life. And thanks also to our police, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, dispatchers, correctional officers, Border Patrol, Secret Service, as well as all other first responders. We thank you all for keeping us safe here at home. And everyone else out there, stay humble, be ready, be prepared. You don't know what's going to happen. What Sean Glass is teaching these young men is something we can all learn. Be ready. You don't know what's coming your way. And the way that you can be ready, the way that you can be prepared is by getting out there every day and getting after it. And until next time, this is Sean and Echo and Jocko out.